Okay, call to order. Tuesday, June 9th, 2026. The Finance and Planning Committee meeting will now come to order. We are convened as of 5:31 p.m. I would respectfully ask everyone attending this meeting to mute yourself unless you are recognized to speak. During today's meeting, we are providing communication access real-time translation, also known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should send an email to the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated for anyone who would like access to a live transcript of this meeting in Spanish. A live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. I would now like to call the roll for the committee members. So, Committee Vice Chair Arcuri.
Here. Unmuting.
Director Geisinger.
I'm here.
Hi. Welcome back from
Thank you.
far away.
Thanks.
Second Vice Chair Guchenritter.
Here.
Welcome. Director Guzman.
I am here.
Good. Sounds good. Director Larson.
Here.
Good. Director Rusha.
Here.
Excellent. And I am here also. Okay, so for the record, I have 7 directors present. So we will now start public comment. I would like to open public comment to anyone who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding agendas. If you wish to speak and have not done so, please either raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. During this time, the committee will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you would like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. Mr. Kroll, do we have anyone here that would like to speak to our committee?
Yes, at this time we have 13 individuals who have raised their hand and desire providing public comment. Make that now 15. And the number is increasing by the moment here. I do want to take a moment real quickly and just recognize that we have some additional board members on the call that are not on the committee. We have Chair O'Keefe here, as well as Director Pagliari and Director Nicholson.
Excellent. That's good.
That. And we will now move on to the public comment. And the first individual is Andrew Fisher.
Okay, if I would also like to add before we start public comment, please bear in mind you're being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, then your comments will need to be submitted in writing. Speakers, you can begin your remarks. However, I would like to remind you, you only have 2 minutes. And I would also like to remind our speakers that we have a full board agenda. And I would hope you would keep your comments to the point and short so we can continue and get our business done for the evening. So our first speaker is, could you tell me, Mr. Kroll?
Yes, Andrew Fisher.
Mr. Fisher, would you like to start your presentation to the committee?
Good evening, members of the committee. Thank you for your time. I will keep it quick. My name is Andrew Fisher. I'm an occasional RTD writer. My most frequent routes are the 10, 12, 15 A line and the FF1 and 2. Others, I'm sure, will discuss problems with the financial estimates contained in the agenda, as well as the benefits of unencumbered windows for rider comfort, navigation, and safety. But I want to talk instead about the impact of window advertising on RTD's ridership. The community only realizes the full range of RTD's benefits when people use the service. So RTD's goal should be to maximize ridership. And in order to maximize ridership, RTD needs to convince potential riders to choose transit instead of, for example, driving or taking rideshare. Putting advertising on windows makes potential riders less likely to choose transit. Putting advertising on windows worsens or makes more difficult rider comfort, navigation, and safety. Fundamentally, putting advertising on windows sends current and potential riders the signal that RTD doesn't care about rider comfort, navigation, and safety, or at least doesn't care as much as it cares about the people outside the bus looking onto the advertising. Why should potential riders choose transit when RTD makes clear that RTD doesn't much care about their experience? The best transit systems around the world do not cover their windows with advertising. I lived for some time in Munich, Germany, and Zurich, Switzerland. In those two places, advertising is confined to the narrow strip above or below the windows. I'd urge the committee and board not to return advertising to windows. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, Mr. Kroll, I do not see any time limit here. Are you keeping track of that?
I sure am, and I will come off mute when a speaker has 10 seconds left to go.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Who is our next speaker then?
Next, we have Leo Horwitz.
Mr. Horowitz, would you like to give us your thoughts?
Hi, yeah, thank you. My name is Leo Horwitz, and I first of all want to say I really appreciate all of the work you guys are doing to make sure that the budget deficit is offset as much as possible without impacting ridership experience. I similarly want to speak to the policy that's being considered about allowing ad wraps on Windows. Once again, I think that I'll speak to specifically the monetary component. Previous estimates of the impact of this policy were lower in the 100,000 to 700,000 range, and the estimate in this packet overstates that and conflates the effect of that policy with also canceling the policy of advertising with Lamar. And I think that if we were to allow window wraps again, the potential revenue benefit would be much lower, closer to that $100,000 to $500,000 original estimate from last year and years prior. And so I think while there is more than zero benefit to returning this policy, I think it's clear that, what the earlier speaker spoke to, that this would not be worth it in the rider experience. The monetary incentive is low and the impact on ridership is high. So I encourage you all to maintain the policy that you've had before and make our buses beautiful and enjoyable to ride. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Mr. Kroll?
Yes, next we have Sagopal Rangaraj.
Okay, so our next speaker is with the last name Raigaraj.
Hi
Yes,
there. Yeah, it's Saigopal
Okay.
Rangaraj. I'm a lead at Greater Denver Transit.
Okay, I
Thank
apologize
you.
for mispronouncing.
No worries. Thank you for the time and thank you for everything that you all do for the board and for RTD. I want to begin by recognizing that there is a budget deficit, and this is something which the board is going to have to navigate, and it will require hard decisions. But I do want to speak in favor of the policy of keeping our windows uncovered and preventing ad wraps on windows. I don't think we should be investing valuable staff time into relitigating a change that, as previous speakers have talked about, costs RTD about 500,000 or so. If like this is an investment that we must be willing to make for our riders, and I want to focus on the word investment. But before I go into that, when this issue first came up a few months ago, I brought up the point about the view of the mountains and how myself and many of my friends have made positive memories on transit and associate those memories fondly with Denver and with RTD. And I think coming back to the idea of an investment, we are going to ask voters, citizens, and people around the Denver Metro to make a hard choice about their hard-earned money at the ballot in the future. And investing in positive experiences on transit is a better way to talk about fixing RTD's budgetary hole rather than trying to fill $500,000 that we are talking about in this meeting today. We need an all of the above strategy that considers multiple revenue options, and in the spectrum of activities that help to fill that gap, this is probably one of the smallest line items that we can find, and I think we need to be investing valuable staff time on other activities such as considering fare gates, thinking about a better fare optimization study, thinking about advertisements in a more holistic way, to talk about stations, to talk about digital advertising, and not conflate ad wraps on Windows with the whole advertising as a revenue stream. I would end by just saying that,
Mr. Rangaraj, your time has expired.
okay.
Okay, thank you for speaking to us. Mr. Kroll, who is next?
Yes, next we have Ty Smith.
For the next speaker with the last name of Smith. Ty, would
Hello,
you-
I'm sorry. Hello, my name is Ty Smith. I am a person with disabilities and I do a lot of work in the States, trying to help make Colorado the best state for people with disabilities. Don't want to rehash what a lot of other people are saying, but just for, as a person who used RTD for decades, from my very first time where I got lost and wound up in the 16th Street Mall, calling my mom saying I'm lost in some guy's basement eating birthday cake and, scaring her, to, using it for most of my life to go to school and eventually to getting my job and really succeeding in life and working myself off benefits. I'd like you to consider helping more people have the same sort of access and account or visibility of the community, and let them participate, not feeling like they are lesser, but greater and can achieve more. And I just, you could have more potential taxpayers to generate more revenue, or you could make it a more miserable trip and discourage people from trying to seek, interactive in the communities of their choice. So as a person with disabilities who've long time used your services, please consider the ramifications of the here and now to the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ty. Mr. Smith, or Mr. Kroll, who is next?
Yes, next we have Tim Keenan.
Would you like to begin,
There we go.
Tim?
Hello, thank you for taking my comment. I'm Tim Keaton. I'm the State Transportation Chair for the National Federation of the Blind of Colorado. First, I just wanted to say we really appreciate the fact that our access on demand and access-a-ride fares are not proposed to increase under any of these scenarios. That is very much welcome, considering we went from $0 to $4.50 for access on demand back in January, which was a real whopper. But as far as the window advertising, it sounds like some of these complaints and ideas that this is going to harm ridership and prospective riders are not going to want to ride RTD is based on these opaque, cheap-looking wraps that really did blunt visibility and make it much, really negatively affected the experience for riders. Whereas this perforated film maintains visibility. And I think, if these estimates are accurate, $2 to $3.5 million a year is a significant chunk of change. And I would rather have my bus come, I'd rather have my bus come with a window wrap than have no bus at all. And I don't know, maybe other people have information that these estimates are wildly high. I don't know, but based on what I see, I don't, and I know the board banned this, and going back on a ban is kind of looks inconsistent. But if there's really that much revenue on the table, and the other alternative is service cuts, I would vote for the window wraps. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for talking. Mr. Kroll, who is next?
Yes, next we have Ian Frash.
Okay, Ian, would you like to start?
Hello. Thanks for taking my comment. I'm Ian Frash. I'm in agreement with the people that commented earlier that I heard that this window wrap ban was partially maybe going away, and I am fiercely opposed to that. I think window wraps in this country on transit need to die, just like everywhere in the country. I think it's a plague on the rider experience, and it makes you feel undignified makes you feel like you're a second-class citizen. It gives you a poor experience when you can't even see out the window, which drivers would never do that, right? You never wrap your own car window with an ad so you can barely see out it. And I think RTD needs to try to attract choice riders, people who might have access to a car or could afford a car or use one, like myself, to, nobody's going to ride the bus if it doesn't feel like a dignified experience. I definitely, some of the best times on transit is when I can look out the window of the light rail and see the mountains, or see out the window of the Zero Bus city scenes and see a new shop that just opened on the corner as I'm going by. And I can even, if I see something cool, I can even just get off at the next stop. It doesn't feel right to have the window wraps. It's almost more like you're in a underground vehicle, like a subway, and being able to look out the window is one of the huge benefits of above ground transit. So yeah, I agree with what people said earlier. Please don't wrap the windows with ads. You can put it anywhere else. I don't care. Every other square inch is fine, just not the windows. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again for speaking to us. Mr. Kroll, who is next?
Yes, next we have Coleman Erickson.
Coleman, would you like to begin?
Thank you, Chair Banker and committee members. My name is Coleman Erickson, writer and resident of District J. I know from my own lived experience writing this system since before I could walk that one of the best things about the ride is the time you get back for yourself. Our time is precious, and the quality of it is limited to the comfort of our environment. This is why I was excited to hear in the news that this board voted to no longer include ad wraps that cover the windows on our vehicles. This is an important decision to align with the comfort and convenience of our riders over revenue that could never do the same. When speaking with other transit advocates and riders I meet, this decision is frequently celebrated, lauding better views of our beautiful city and state and more convenience in navigating to your stop. I urge this committee and every board member to not reverse this decision and to continue to side with riders when tackling our declining ridership crisis.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yes, next we have Lauren Hanson.
Is it Laura? Would you like
Lauren.
I apologize. If you would like to begin.
No worries. Good evening, board members. My name is Lauren Hanson. I live in District A. I come to speak in keeping the prohibition on bus and light rail ad wraps as someone who is dependent on public transportation and bicycle. While this has spoken to the low return on investment it has, I want to highlight the positive impact that removing these wraps has had on one of my nearly weekly commutes. I'm a regular at the C Film Center in Denver, and it often means taking either the 10 or the 15 to get there and back from my condo in Cap Hill. Prior to removing the ads, I'd hop on the bus headed westbound, contemplating whatever movie I just watched, and then be faced with the reverse of a gaudy ad that would distract me and make myself and my friends who watch movies with me dizzy. After the ban, I can view the beautiful landscape of Colorado, meditating on whatever movie I just saw, including movies like Backrooms and Eddington. When I heard the ad wraps would be reinstated, I had to make myself heard, and I just want to say that I am against this, not just because of my commute and my experience, but for other riders, both potential and current, who should deserve to ride a public service in dignity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again. Mr. Kroll?
Yes, next we have Emma Griffin.
Emma, would you like to begin?
Sure, thanks for having me. Hi, my name is Emma Griffin. I live in District A. I ride RTD very frequently, and I'm a co-lead for Greater Denver Transit. I'd like to strongly urge the board not to rescind their previous decision to ban ad wraps from RTD vehicles. These are degrading for riders, and the ads that cover the windows specifically are especially egregious, personally giving me and other riders headaches if we try looking out a covered window as we use transit to get around. Public transit is a public service, and we don't put ads on other public services such as fire trucks, nor should we. The 500K annual revenue RTD generates from these ads is minuscule in comparison to the total budget and comes at the expense of riders' dignity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to hear from you, Emma. Next,
Yes, next we have Brianna Stuber.
Brianna, if you'd like to begin.
Hi. Thank you so much for everybody who is here. I know everybody gives time to this, so I really do appreciate your presence. My 30-second version of what I'm here to say is just that RTD should not reverse the window advertising ban before it has even been fully implemented. The financial benefits being cited appear overstated. Riders have not yet had a chance to experience the change, and RTD has not collected any actual data on revenue, safety, visibility, or customer experience. Passengers' windows are a transportation and accessibility feature first, not simply advertising space. RTD should keep the current policy, gather data over the next year, and revisit the issue with real evidence instead of projections. The biggest thing for me is just that the financial case is just not settled. The lack of real world data, and then just for windows are an accessibility and safety issue. As for being low vision myself, I definitely use landmarks and not, anything on the bus itself, but large building landmarks to be able to get where I'm going. And so if that ability is taken away from me, it'll only implement more cost into Access-a-Ride, because now you have made public transit not accessible. And I think that is really all I have to say. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And I hope that you come to a good decision.
Okay, thank you again for speaking. Mr. Kroll?
Yes, next we have Brad Vickers.
Brad, your turn here. Thank you.
How's it going, y'all? Thank you so much for having me. I want to be really clear, like these windows should be. The ad wraps going around the bus speak to a desperation that RTD cannot afford to uphold right now. We cannot come across as desperate. We need to come across as forward thinking. We need to come across as a public agency of value, of import. We need to have a PR renovation right now. We are going to need to ask voters moving forward to invest in a wide-ranging transit overhaul, quite frankly. We are not in a place where they trust us. And looking like walking billboards, desperate for funds, is not the way to ask voters for resources. We need to prove to voters that we are worth their time, worth their money, worth their investment. And if we are incapable of doing that, if we are incapable of putting forward our best foot, incapable of demonstrating a confidence that comes from knowing our own value, not as billboards, not as advertisements, not as substandard marketing tactics for cheap lawyers and cheap cars and cheap investment firms, but rather as an agency that delivers millions upon millions of rides a year, if not a day. We need to be bringing forward our best foot if we're going to become Chicago level, if we're going to become Seattle level, New York level, Tokyo level in the long haul. We cannot come across this weak. This is a sign of weakness. And so reverting back on a well thought out decision by the board, being brought about by staff that is trying to find a hole in the budget that they can shore up. I understand the severity of this moment, but this is not the path to solve this budget crisis. The path to solving this budget crisis
your time has
is
expired.
activism. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Next speaker, Mr. Kroll.
Yes, next we have Richard Bamber.
Richard, if you want to start. Thank you for
Good evening, Chair Benker, members of the committee, Mr. Kroll. Previous commentators have made all the great points about the issues window wraps cause, with one notable exception, who's the guy that represents the blind. Sometimes the jokes really sometimes write themselves. Anyway, I thought I would look more into the figures quoted in the presentation, and it all centers around the minimum annual guarantee that for advertising revenue. And the last figure was quoted up to 2021, yet we have a contract that was terminated on the 1st of December 25. So what was the MAG figure for 2022 to 2024 and the first 11 months of 2025? I think committee members should ask that. Was the figure 3.4 million a year, or was it something significantly less, perhaps due to considerations from the pandemic? Did the prior vendor, Lamar, submit a bid for the September 2025 RFP? I feel that's a question committee members might want to ask. And then let's look at the figures overall for RTD running an advertising program that's which is provided by an outside vendor. RTD does incur support costs, but they seem to write them off and just call it fractional across internal staff. But you look at this, there's a program manager of 60% time, AR staff 20%, ops staff 10%. This is at least approaching one full-time equivalent FTE. Then I looked at RTD's improvised advertising program, which they put in at short notice. Much kudos to the staff involved in that. They brought in 537,000 approximately up to May the 8th, which is the 128th day of the year. So what I did do, the pro rata calculation, that would bring in, and this is net revenue after the costs, 1,533,000 approximately.
Mr. Bamber, your time has expired.
And that's well enough. So ask the cost, but I was going to say 500K annual costs, developing the in-house program, that's for option one, definitely the way to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other speaker?
Yes, we still have several, quite a few to go. At this point, we would like to have Jack Rosenthal speak.
Okay, Jack, hello.
Good evening, directors. This is Jack Rosenthal. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to speak tonight. I know we have a full agenda, so I'll keep my comments short, brief, and to the point here. Last year, I was ecstatic when the board voted for a system advertising policy which prohibited advertisement wraps that covered windows. This is a great improvement. It shows the board's focus on ridership and where we want to be going down the road. And to be honest, to see on the agenda tonight 4 different options, I think it's great that we're considering whether we're going to do it in-house or through a third-party vendor. However, we have 4 different options on the table, and 2 of those options go against the vision that the board set forward last year. I think with ridership on the top of our minds, we should be looking forward to implementing the policy that we already adopted last year. There's still advertisement wraps on buses right now that cover windows. The policy has not been implemented yet. I think you should be questioning the measurement that of the numbers set on the table for the costs of window versus not on window. They don't appear consistent with the numbers that were said last year in front of the board. And I think it's on this committee to be questioning how those numbers were derived and what value they are. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you, Jack. You know, I just would like to mention to everyone, you may not be aware, but we are not voting on this issue tonight. We are discussing it, but there will be no vote on window advertising tonight. So, Mr. Kroll, would you like to let me know who the next speaker is?
Yes, next we have Curtis Garrett.
Curtis, if you'd like to let us know what your thoughts are.
Hi. First of all, thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Sorry. I want to thank the committee for giving us the opportunity to share our opinions. I know your jobs aren't easy. You give your time away from your family and all kinds of things, but this is definitely about the window wraps. I got to do an interview with Channel 7 on back in December, celebrating the fact that RTD was no longer going to put the wraps over the windows. I spent time, several people have discussed the issues for those of us with disabilities, how those affect our rides and ultimately our safety. I'll tell you the truth, I feel very betrayed to get up that day and celebrate that those were going away, that our needs were actually being met, was great. And now, like I said, I feel betrayed. It puts me in a bad place publicly. I serve on several committees statewide. The other piece I just like to say is, I don't want to reiterate what everybody else has said, is that I worked in government for almost 30 years. I tell people on all the different committees I'm in across the state that 99% of government workers want and just like RTD, want to do the right thing. My question tonight is, are you one of the 1% who don't want to do the right thing? And I think that's the discussion that needs to be had. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Curtis. Mr. Kroll?
Yes, next we have Michael Farrington.
Okay, Michael.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Banker, members of the committee. I am here to speak, as you can imagine, on the ad wraps. I want to highlight, I think that so many folks have done a really good job kind of sharing their perspectives on the ad wraps. I agree with virtually everyone who's spoken. I do want to highlight that I am very supportive of separating these two decisions into separate decisions. I think the decision of whether or not we continue to do window wrappings is one that we can make in the light of the budget crisis and everything else we have going on. But the second one is the decision to bring that in-house rather than have an outside vendor do it. I am strongly supportive of that. I think that as you go through today, I hope that that's not lost and you don't kill this entire thing as a single item because of the opposition to the first item. But I really think that bringing it internally and having our staff do it, one, gives us some know-how and some skills internally, which is great. And secondly, I think it gives us the ability to really develop our ability to know what our actual costs are and to better formulate in a year or 2 years whether or not ad wraps over windows is a substantial difference in the amount of revenue we can generate from this. I think right now that decision is a little bit premature. I trust you as leaders who have looked at this extensively to make the right decision. But I really encourage you to keep that external, keep it internal. Do not send it as an external RFP. We already didn't get any responses to our last RFP. We have the ability. We have really good staff here at RTD. I'd like to see that. Thank you so much for the time.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for talking to us. Mr. Kroll.
Yes, next we have Justin Wilhelm.
Justin, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, hi, my name's Justin. I'm actually really surprised at how many people came out. I think it's great that everybody is so invested. I kind of have a different view on the advertising situation. I feel like a kind of carte blanche ban on any kind of window wrap or ad wrap around windows is not the way to go. And I think we should consider fun advertising with strict guidelines as set by RTD that can help people be invested with the trains when they see them and see a fun train and see a fun environment. There are ads that are a lot of fun, and these window wraps, the perforated ones, do not really block your vision all that much that you can see out there. I don't see the safety issue in it. But then again, I might have a biased view because I do not have any kind of disability that does not allow me to see out the windows. So there may be things that I don't see there, but I do think that the board should consider having fun guidelines for good advertising that invests in the RTD and brings people on board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Our next speaker.
Next we have Jimmy Mull.
Okay. Jimmy, if you'd like to.
Good evening, board members. My name is Jimmy Mole. I am a resident of District M, and I'm here to support keeping the ban on covering the windows with advertisements. I think it's been great to be able to see out the windows. On my morning route, people have noticed and we've talked about it, and it's been really great. And so I know this is only a discussion, but I would really hope that you guys would consider keeping the ban. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for being concise. Mr. Kroll?
Yes, next we have Robert Greer.
Okay. Robert, you're up.
Hi there. Thank you to the board for hearing my testimony. My name is Rob. I'm an attorney and a dad in District A. I ride mostly the 15, the 40, the A-line, and Flatiron Flyers. And I want to add my voice to the chorus of people asking to not put ad wrap back on the windows. I think, the primary consideration in all this should be ridership. That's RTD's main challenge. It's closely related to its funding issues. If we don't have a quality experience for riders, then we're not going to get the ridership jumps that we need to justify, expansion of RTD budgets. And I really have to take issue with the people who have said that perforated window ads don't detract from the ridership experience. It really significantly does in my experience. I don't consider myself to be a particularly sensitive person to this kind of thing. I don't have any disabilities or anything like that, but it's a noticeable difference. I get nauseous when I'm on these buses because I'm not looking out the window at what's happening outside. I'm kind of forced to like look inside, and that means that I am not having my bearings as well, and I'm not able to. It's like kind of being on a submarine or something. Honestly, to a certain degree, it's only a slight exaggeration. When you're not focused on something outside, then you get nauseous, and that is just not an acceptable outcome for service like this. So I really want to encourage you guys to not have the ad wrap on the windows. I think that any analysis should really consider diminution of ridership in contrast to any loss in ad revenue. I think we can do a lot better than this. I want to be able to push RTD budgets as high as they can go and ask voters for more money, and it's going to be really difficult to do that if the ridership experience is poor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Next speaker.
Yes, next we have Jack Hermanson.
Okay, Jack, if you'd like to begin.
Hi, yes, thank you. My name is Jack and I live in District A, and I'll keep my comment brief. I've just always had motion sickness since I was a little kid, and making the change to the buses to no longer have the ads that you can barely see through that are black with those little circles that I can kind of look through was a huge positive development for me. It makes the bus ride so much more comfortable when I don't have to deal with that. And arriving at work at 9 o'clock in the morning, already feeling like you're about to throw up because of the motion sickness is a huge detraction from taking RTD. So I'd highly encourage you to keep that ban there and find the funds elsewhere. I think there are other options besides the ad wraps. If this is really the best we can do, I find that hard to believe. So once again, you don't want to show up at work and throw up or feel like you're about to throw up. So maybe consider that when it is time to vote. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Mr. Kroll.
Yes, next we have Tyler Mangin.
Okay, Tyler, if you could speak now. Tyler, are you there?
We will go ahead and move to the next and come back to Tyler. Next
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now, Tyler.
Yes.
Hi, sorry. Long-time listener, first-time caller. That's my mistake. So my name's Tyler Mangin. I use public transit to get around, usually the 38, the 52, and 19 from the 40th Avenue stops. I thank you for taking my testimony tonight. I have had the experience of riding in buses before, and it's very disorienting. I don't have a disability, but I have had the experience of missing my stop at night because I was in a bus with ad wraps on the windows. It's dark, like riding in a tunnel forever and ever. So I understand and don't envy the position the board is in, having to deal with the budget issues that are presented with them. But it looks to me from the staff report like the ad wrap revenue is basically a rounding error in the larger problem that they face. I think that it's penny wise and pound foolish to expect better revenue outcomes in the long run when you make it harder to ride the bus. So please keep the ban on ad wraps on windows. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Tyler. I would like to ask if there are more speakers. If you are speaking on the same topic and your views have already been presented to the board, if you could just to keep your comments short, that would be great. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. I would appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Kroll?
Yes, at this time, Director Banker, I see 2 hands raised, the next of whom is from Joe Meyer.
Okay, Joe. Joe, are you there?
Joe, it looks like you came off mute and then you went back on. Why don't we go to the next speaker, which is Elizabeth Bonney, and we will come back to Joe.
Okay, Elizabeth, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Bonney. I live in District A and ride regularly, urging you to stick to your decision to continue removing the ad wraps from windows. A hypothetical marginal increase in ad revenue can't possibly be enough to offset the decrease in rider comfort and safety that all those little dots represent from the inside, especially for those of us who suffer from migraines or motion sickness. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth, for speaking. Joe, are you there? Joe, maybe you're having technical difficulties.
Yep, now we've got staff has given Joe the permission to speak, so Joe should be able to go. And then we do have one hand that went down earlier and is back up. So we have one more after Joe.
Okay, Joe.
Thank you, Chair Banker and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'll keep my comment. I generally agree with the other speakers that I would like to see the progression of revenues over the next year without ad wraps on the windows, just from a rider experience standpoint. What I more wanted to speak to is I'm excited to see staff and the board considering bringing on additional full-time employees to specifically manage revenue generation programs. I agree with Michael Farrington that bringing on staff to manage advertising revenue should be considered as a standalone issue, as it looks to have benefits no matter what happens with the ad placement. But I would also encourage this committee to explore what other opportunities for revenue generation can occur if we're willing to bring on additional staff for them. I think about EcoPass and neighborhood EcoPass outreach. How much revenue can those generate with four additional full-time employees? Parking revenue collection and enforcement, how much revenue could that generate with 4 additional full-time employees? I think considering 4 FTEs for managing advertising contracts is great, but I would love to see opening up the opportunity to look at other areas of the agency where the commitment to bring on staff could multiply revenue even further. And the last piece I would like to comment on is when I look at the fare increase study and the projections for cost and timeline associated with that, based on the prior studies done most recently in 2023, I believe. I would just like to ask members of this committee to explore if those timelines and costs are consistent with what other agencies pay when other agencies perform fare increases, whether adjustments for inflation or larger adjustments, such as what the MTA does and explores twice a year, just to make sure that we are not taking on additional costs here at RTD that are not technically required for fare studies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Mr. Kroll, do we have any more speakers?
Yes, at this time I see one final hand raised, and that is from Bianca Emerson.
Okay, please start.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much to the committee and the chair. I'm Bianca Emerson, and I, along with so much as what has been said, I do urge you to keep the current prohibition on advertising that covers the windows. I do believe that the financial justification for reversing the policy remains unclear. And I do just want to focus on ridership experience, because I believe that passenger windows serve a critical function for riders. They help people to orient themselves, identify stops, navigate unfamiliar routes, and feel connected to their surroundings. Clear windows are particularly important for seniors, people with disabilities, visitors, and riders who rely on visual landmarks to travel independently. They also contribute to rider comfort and prevent motion sickness, as we heard earlier, and help improve perceptions of safety. These benefits were among the reasons the board adopted the policy in the first place. And so I do believe that the question before you is not whether RTD should pursue advertising revenue. It absolutely should. But the question is whether RTD has demonstrated that covering passenger windows is necessary to achieve that goal. And at this point, I believe that the answer is no. And so before considering any reversal, I believe RTD should complete implementation of the ban, evaluate actual revenue impacts, collect rider feedbacks, and explore non-window advertising alternatives. So the board should have real data, not projections, before making a decision that directly affects the rider experience. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Bianca. Mr. Kroll, can we move on to emailed comments?
Yes, we may. At this time, I see no further hands raised. There were 4 emailed comments in advance of this meeting, one from the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition regarding the budget, and then 3 related to window coverings from Greater Denver Transit, Jamie Lewis, and Robert Helmick.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we will close the public comment period at this time. Okay, moving on to the next item, information from external entities. There are no presentations from external entities, at least this month. We will now move to recommended action. So for tonight, we've got 2 recommended actions on our agenda. I will read the first one, and we will then bring in Mr. Quinn to enlighten us. So the first action is boundary mapping contract scope summary. For the Board of Directors to approve the scope summary for a solicitation to subsequently authorize the general manager and CEO or her designee to enter into contract for consulting services to assist staff with maintaining an accurate district boundary map. Okay, I need a motion. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Guzman.
Okay. Mr. Guzman has made a motion. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Need a
Guzman.
second though, but second if you need it.
Yeah, we do need a second. Is Mr. Quinn here? Mr. Quinn, are you here to talk to us about this potential contract?
Hi, yes, thank you, Chair Benker. I'll be real brief. Board report's fairly succinct in that I know we've thrown a lot of boundary mapping issues and actions at the board over the last several months. So this ties nicely into that. We do have an external contractor that we use to help us determine when annexations have occurred from the local jurisdictions. Also help us draw up the new maps and the legal descriptions that are associated with those actions, help us with the filing and the recordations with the county clerks. And then lastly, the contractor also, in years like this, an election year, help us with ensuring that the precincts that the individual counties are showing for the elections are in fact correct for the respective board districts. So it's quite a variety of tasks that they perform, but the contract will be expiring this fall. So we are requesting approval of the general scope from the board. And I'd be happy to respond to any questions that the board might have.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Director Guzman.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Quinn or whoever would be able to answer this, there is no dollar amount listed with the financial impact of this. As we are discussing financial matters, I would like to know if there's any idea of how much this contract would actually cost and where those funds would be coming from, because that's what tonight is all about.
Typically, we have budgeted up to about $129,000 per year. However, in most years, we have not spent nearly that much. We have generally included a fairly robust contingency fund in case unexpected actions come up. As an example, 2 years ago, when Erie petitioned to come into the district, that involved quite a bit of analysis from our contractor. So if activities like that come up, we do have the funds ready to cover that. But like I said, most years we have not covered anything close to that amount.
Okay, thank you. Director Arusha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had the same question as Director Guzman, and to that end, I would say I can vote yes on this if we put a dollar amount on it. So would staff be comfortable if the committee voted to do so, if we said, say, up to $135,000?
Coming from the staff end, and I'll maybe need to defer to my general manager, but it seems like a reasonable amount given the historically what we've spent.
Okay, I see Ms. Johnson as GM CEO. How would you like to respond to that question?
Yes, thank you very much, Committee Chair Banker. Thank you, Director Arusha, and thank you, Mr. Quinn, for your response. I was trying to get my off mute, and I do support that recommendation put forward, and there could be amendment made to state up to $135,000 because we're confident that it won't exceed that. So thank you.
Okay, Excellent, thank you. Director Gutschenritter.
Thank you, Chair Banker. I'm just curious, like, is this a bucket of hours? Is it time boxed, or is it purely here's the scope and however long it takes them to deliver it?
Mr. Quinn?
Yes, Director Gutschenritter, that's the depending on the tasks they perform, they bill us for those, and that's why we do have quite a bit of variability each year on how much we have spent for the contract. As I noted, 2 years ago this summer when Erie came in, we probably billed all of the hours because of all the tasks that they performed. Last year we didn't come close. So
thank you.
Any other question? Director Ruscia, did you want to make a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Is it all right?
Of course, go for it.
Okay, thank you. So I would hold on, I'm grabbing the motion language here. I would like to move that we amend the motion to add after the word phrase consulting services, the phrase up to $135,000.
Is there a second?
May I ask a question?
Yes, of course. I see Mr. Kroll has his hand up. Do you have?
It may be the same thing. So I'm going to ask about language real quick. And would the director be amenable? And then I can second for a not to exceed amount of $135,000.
Yes.
And if that's perfect, then I will second that motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Guzman.
And I see Mr. Kroll. Mr. Kroll, yes.
I just want to make sure, and I want to phone a friend here with Mr. Quinn, that that is the anticipated upper limit of the annual expense on this. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. Quinn.
So might I recommend to Directors Ruscia and Guzman that they further revise their proposed amendment to indicate the not to exceed amount be up to $135,000 per fiscal year?
Okay. Director Ruscia, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, what Mr. Kroll said. I trust staff can make conforming language and they know what we mean. Thanks,
Okay.
Mr. Kroll.
And Mr. Quinn, are you good with that? And our CEO GM Johnson, are you also good with that language?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you.
Okay. Do we need a vote on that? Do we have any no votes on the amendment? No. Okay, with that, I see it passed. I'd like to take then the entire motion. Do we have any no votes on the motion? No. Excellent. So with that, it has passed and we'll move forward to the Executive Committee and the full board. Thank you. Okay, so the second action that we have to take tonight, this one is, this one's got quite a bit of, let's put it this way. It would be wonderful if folks, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had like many folks from the public come to talk to us about passing the budget? But all my budget years, it's sort of interesting to see that very few people do want to come and speak to the budget. But to me, this is exciting. Okay, so let's move on to the second action item, which is 2027 budget deficit reduction concepts and alignment. This is for the Board of Directors to authorize the GM CEO to advance deeper financial modeling and inclusion in the 2027 proposed budget on the following tactics. Item 1, fair and past pricing adjustments. 2, legislative reforms for additional revenue. 3, refinancing opportunities. And 4, labor expense changes. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, so thank you, directors. So it's Director Larson and Director Gutschenritter. Thank you. Okay, so I would now like to ask Deborah Johnson, GM CEO, and Kelly Mackey, CFO, to present this item. And after we hear from staff, I'm going to present a couple of slides related to this, and we hope to have a thorough discussion about what the committee, your thoughts about how to proceed with the deficit reduction plan. So I don't know who wants to go first, CEO Johnson or CFO Mackey?
Yes, Committee Chair Banker, I will start and then yield the floor to our very capable CFO. To ground everybody in our intent this evening, I know there has been quite a bit of discussion about the path forward. As representing staff this evening, our intent here is to get alignment from this committee. Additionally, tomorrow we'll be having conversations that will ensue at the Operations, Safety, and Security Committee. And what we are seeking is guidance relative to foundational pieces upon which we can build a budget. With that as a backdrop, the reason for the alignment is that we have received numerous questions and thoughts and suggestions about a path forward. But what we need as staff is to understand where the board as a collective would like us to spend time in mapping out or doing more financial modeling, so we'll have an understanding of where we sit. Any action taken tonight is not approval of any draft budget. This gives us an opportunity to build said budget and bring that back to you all for consideration. Recognizing that we are in the midst of the month of July and we're in the midst of June, next month is July, and pursuant to statute, we have to have a draft budget available for public consumption in October. It would be staff's intent to bring forward a draft budget for discussion in September with additional discussions in October and quite naturally in November, subsequently early December for any action. And so with the discussion that happens tonight, that will lay the groundwork moving forward. Additionally, I want to stress in relationship to any key timelines, once again, we would be bringing back information. And so we would like to have some direction relative to action that's taken, and keeping in mind, this could be amended just as the last item was amended. I know Committee Chair Banker and I had a very hearty conversation yesterday, and one thing is that we realize we want the same things relative to where we sit, and as we move forward, that is what we are seeking this evening. With that, I will yield the floor to Ms. Mackey to walk through the information that we have before you, and look forward to leaning in as appropriate with the conversation that will ensue this evening. So with that, CFO Mackey, I will yield the floor to you. Thank you.
Okay, CFO Mackey.
Good evening, Chair Banker and members of the Finance and Planning Committee. I'm Kelly Mackey, Chief Financial Officer. As additional context, RTD began operating in a significant deficit in 2024 after federal COVID era relief concluded, and that deficit has persisted at levels that are not sustainable in future years. In December 2025, the board directed staff to identify and advance reductions and enhancements needed to achieve a balanced budget by the 2028 proposed budget. And that directive makes the Finance and Planning Committee's prioritization decisions this summer essential to our path forward. Board adopted fiscal policies are our financial guardrails. Repeated exceptions erode clarity and increase risk, and ongoing structural deficits shift burdens to future boards, customers, and taxpayers. One of the board's roles is as a fiduciary acting in RTD's long-term best interest, maintaining adequate liquidity and reserves, and ensuring continuity through volatility. On May 27, 2026, the board held a study session on the 2027 budget deficit covering ranges, likelihood, and efforts across strategies and defined committee purviews. And within this committee's purview are 4 concepts that I'll summarize now, including near-term impacts and sequencing considerations. First is adjusting fares and past program pricing following a fare study and equity analysis with modeled elasticity and Title VI considerations. This is estimated at $0 to $12 million potential revenue increase, with most realizable impacts likely in 2028 because of study timelines and contract cycles. Likelihood of success may be medium, and level of effort may be high. This requires your direction to initiate objectives, a formal fare study and equity analysis, and deeper elasticity modeling. Equity is paramount, and we must evaluate disparate impacts on BIPOC riders and disproportionate burdens on low-income customers consistent with Title VI thresholds. Fair actions can help, but they take time, require robust public process, and must be sequenced carefully to avoid unintended consequences for vulnerable riders. Next is seeking statutory changes to expand revenue authorities, such as through higher risk investments, tolls, citations, or other mechanisms, through stakeholder engagement and a multi-year legislative agenda. This potential revenue amount is currently not known, and the likelihood of success is medium, with a level of effort of high, and impacts would likely be in 2028 at the earliest, given the legislative cycles. If the committee authorizes pursuit, we'll begin structured engagement with partners and craft a legislative work plan. Potential yield could be meaningful, but success depends on external receptivity. Third is continuing and expanding the active practice of bond refunding when market conditions are favorable, grounded in analyses of the Series 2013A, 2016A, and 2017A, as well as others. Staff expects at least $1 million, perhaps as high as $3 million in interest expense relief, plus cash flow benefits from principal adjustments. Recent analyses show $38 million of potential 2027 cash flow under certain refunding actions. Likelihood of success is high and effort is medium. Endorsing continued and expanded refinancing enables the agency to stay nimble and capture market windows, smoothing near-term cash flows while preserving long-term discipline. Finally, reducing labor expense via a calibrated mix of vacancies, attrition, reductions, furloughs, overtime management, merit increases, retirement contributions, and/or benefit adjustments. There's potential savings likely up to $45 million here, with likelihood of success high and level of effort high. Savings are significant, but not fully additive. Operational interdependencies can constrain totals and require careful sequencing and labor relations processes. Staff will return with a prioritized 2027 labor strategy based on interdependencies and feasibility, and some elements require meet and confer and alignment with service hour modification decisions to ensure maximum customer outcomes. The OSS committee will be evaluating items under its purview in parallel, such as potential service hour modifications. The May 27 study session signaled that we will likely need all of these strategies to eliminate the deficit. And advancing these tactics keeps the agency within board-established guardrails, reduces structural risk, and meets the board's 2028 balance directive while considering liquidity posture or resiliency to volatility. So I'm requesting that the committee authorize the GM and CEO to advance deeper modeling and include the following in the development of the 2027 proposed budget. Evaluation and modeling for fair and past price increases with objectives and a fair study and equity analysis. Pursuit of legislative options to secure additional revenue authority as described. Endorsement of continued and expanded debt refinancing strategies with market-driven execution, and advancement of labor-related cost reduction strategies for 2027 with staff expertise to guide combinations and sequencing. The agency's goal is a disciplined, multi-pronged approach with near-term cash flow relief, prudent expense management, and medium-term revenue actions executed within your policy guardrails. And I welcome your questions and direction now so that we can proceed, hopefully promptly, on modeling and budget integration.
Okay, thank you, CFO Mackey. Mr. Crow, oh, excuse me, I see a hand up. Director Larson, you've got a question or comment?
Yeah, I have, I guess, a question and a comment. I guess I'll start with the question about fares. I just want to understand, why couldn't we just say, look, we're just going to raise fares like 20% across the board? I mean, our fares used to be higher. Why do we have to do so much evaluation and work to kind of verify that we can do this? Thanks. And then I have a comment after that answer, I guess.
I think that's a very good question. I think CEO Johnson, you would like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you very much. And we also have Kelly Irving on, who serves as our Director of Civil Rights. And Ms. Irving has decades of experience in this space. So I will start and then yield the floor to her to supplement. Recognizing that we are recipients of federal dollars and in compliance with our Title VI program, of which follows the FTA circular, we are obligated to ensure that we perform a fair, study, and equity analysis, more chiefly an equity analysis, to look at our entire service area to ensure that we are not impacting historically disenfranchised populations, more so speaking as relates to low-income communities and those of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And so basically in doing that, regardless of if the fare were to be increased or decreased, we have to ensure that we are not basically causing undue harm to the populations I just specified. In your packet, there's additional information relative to that circular upon which I was referencing. As I flip through quickly, we cite what that is in our supplemental document, and I'm getting there and I'm buying time by rambling. When you look at the circular, it's on package page 69, 68, where it says comprehensive fare studies also provide the analytical foundation required to complete a Title VI fare equity analysis, which is required under FTA Circular 4702.1B prior to implementing a fare change. This ensures that the board and the public have clear, transparent information on how proposed fare changes may affect Black, Indigenous, and people of color and low-income customers, and whether mitigation strategies may be required. At this juncture, I will yield the floor to Ms. Irving to supplement anything that I've outlined and just provide the grounding for where we are and the reason why we have to do this, recognizing that we provide a public service. Ms. Irving, if I may, Committee Chair Banker. Yes,
Irving, if you could.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, General Manager, CEO Johnson. And thank you so much, Madam Chair and Director Larson, for that question. We are required to do this legally. It is a federal regulation, and I know that you understand that and you want to move forward quickly. Unfortunately, we want to mitigate and reduce risk. And what I mean by that is the populations that we talked about regarding disparate impact, which is BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and then also a disproportionate burden to those that are low income. We want to ensure that we have the backup, the information, the data set that actually shows whether or not there are impacts and or a burden placed on these two populations. More importantly, we want to move away from the posture of being defensive and get to a posture of being transit equity. This is from the position of our state may be required. And with that being said, we just want to make sure that RTD is not increasing fares, but also then fighting battles in the courts of law relative to these two populations. So it's really about mitigating risk and then also having the public, these populations, to be able to comment and also allow us an opportunity to mitigate if it is practical. So that is the response. Thank you, GM Johnson, for actually pulling off the regulation. As a requirement for receiving federal funding, this is an adopted regulation or adopted Title VI program by RTD, and it is a federal regulation under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Irving. Director Larson, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I guess I have comments now. One is that I appreciate the regulations and everything, but it's really hard for me to understand how, if we were to just raise fares across the board the same amount for every route and everybody, that there's an equity issue there. But aside from that, I have a comment, which is that what I would like to see is an analysis of basically what happens if we don't cut anything in terms of running, and basically we abandon this directive to balance the budget, and instead we draw down basically the operating reserve and the FISA reserve, what would happen to us? Specifically, would this affect our bond rating? And what would be the consequences of that if it did? And basically, how long could we sustain doing that if we decided to do that? I mean, aside from that, I support all of the analyses that are part of this, but I would love to add an analysis that includes kind of the consequences of not doing anything in as concrete of a way as we can predict. And that's really
okay. Thank you, Director Larson. I was going to go to CFO Mackey, but I see she already has her hand up, ready to answer that question. So CFO Mackey, do you want to address Director Larson's question or comment? You're muted.
Thank you. That's a really good question, Director Larson. In a few of the recent board reports, such as the bus procurement, we had a couple study sessions. There's cash flow analyses that show projections in future years, as well as there's a bit of the information in tomorrow's OSS material. And so you can see through different scenarios what cash impacts would be. And we recommend maintaining at least $200 million in cash that's available to spend in order to comply with the heart of the fiscal policy to maintain operating reserves. But once the cash is obviously spent below zero, then at that point, we would not be able to pay certain vendors, et cetera. And there was a recent report by one of our credit rating agencies that did explain that they would like us to balance the budget as best as possible in 2027, but I can't predict with accuracy in terms of at what point our credit rating would be decreased, because it depends a lot on the story that we tell. It depends a lot on, frankly, the meetings that I have with them. And so I think there's a good chance next year that we could have a credit rating decrease if we don't take significant action on the budget. I actually thought they were going to reduce our credit ratings this year, at least one of them. But fortunately, through meeting with them for quite a long period of time, we were able to sustain it where it is.
Okay, thank you. I see Director Ruscia, and then I'd like to finish the presentation, and then here's my goal. I want your comments. I would like to hear from every board member on this committee. I've got 4 questions that I want to ask all of you to get some direction as to how you would like to proceed trying to come up with budget solutions to erase our $215 million deficit. So we'll go to Director Ruscia, and then I'd like to ask Mr. Kroll to pull up that last table, and then I'd like to do like a round robin and go to each one of you, ask you a few questions, give me your thoughts. What direction do you want us to follow? It's very valuable. We need to hear from you. So Director Ruscia, you have a comment or question?
Yes, thank you. A few, if that's all right. I did my homework. Thank you, Madam Chair. So first on the reserves question, I believe I heard Director Larson mention the FISA, and I agree that we should, staff should at least give us a memo of what our options are regarding the FISA and the potential implications. So I would like to know, is it possible for us to, quote, borrow money from the FISA and still contribute to joint service in a meaningful way? I would also like to know, if we completely draw down on the FISA in the next couple of years for joint service, what effect that has on our credit rating. And so it doesn't have to be part of this motion, but I just wanted to say, on the record, that I asked this in email. I would appreciate it if staff could at least get the board a memo on what our options with the FISA are, because that is a fund. And no, I said options. I didn't say a specific recommended action, and I'm not making one tonight. But on to the motion before us. So the language essentially directs staff to model a fares increase and assumes that will happen. I understand that it was in our 5 and 10-year financial forecast. The staff assumed we would increase fares. However, I don't think it belongs in this motion for a couple of reasons. Number one, fare increases, if we decide to do that, is something that we will see in 2028 or 2029. It doesn't solve the 2017 budget problem. And second, notwithstanding the fact that we do have some of the highest fares in the country, not necessarily a badge of honor, we are very unique in our fare structure. Like, we don't have regional fares. So it costs me the same to get down the street one stop over as it would if I were in the southernmost part of Parker going to Nederland for a 3.5-hour transit ride. We have never, that I can remember in the board's history, so that's 15 years of observation and being on it, have asked staff to do fares modeling without some guidance and some goals. And so I just feel that this fares conversation is a good conversation to have, but it's separate from the 2027 budget. So I would prefer that we have a separate discussion on that and then give staff some guidelines and goals so they also know what it is that the board is looking for. And as noted, this is potentially a 1.5 year long process. It's not an immediate fix. So I don't know, Madam Chair or staff, if you guys would be agreeable. I just personally don't want to vote on something that says I agree with increasing fares. And that's what I feel like the motion says, even if it wasn't the intent. Thanks.
This is part of some of the questions that I wanted to ask our board. And we do have another item at the very end of our meeting where we're going to be talking about fares and how we're going to go about it and whether we're going to go about it. But I do see whether or not we want to proceed with the study, since it takes a year, perhaps longer, to come up with the information that we need to even proceed. So one of the things I'm hoping to get some direction tonight is to ask our committee whether or not you want to proceed with the fair information. And then at some point, year and a half down the road, we would be voting on whether or not we wanted to proceed with an increase. If I could ask Mr. Kroll, could you pull up that one PowerPoint chart? And then I'd like to just briefly show it to you and then go around our committee to ask you 4 questions. Okay, here's what I did. I wanted to know how close we were to coming up with the 215 million that we are short for 2027. So what I did over a week ago is I took all of the presentations that our CFO had given us. I wanted to simply add them together, and also some of the suggestions that we've been talking about over the past couple of weeks and months. It's just an estimate. All I wanted to do was to find out, are we close? Are we so far away from the 215 million that it might not work? What I tried putting together, and there's a lot of ifs here, I understand that. In fact, Mr. Kroll, could you go to the next slide, to the bottom line? Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you. Our goal is to come up with roughly 215 million next year, if that's possible. I believe it is. We still have a lot of recommendations that we need to proceed. We need more information. I understand that. We also need to approach the state legislature to see whether or not they would be open to working with us and helping us find some revenue options. The reason I've got 3 options here, though, this is actually what the Operations Committee is going to be talking about tomorrow. Basically, there are just a couple of differences between option 1, 2, and 3 as I was putting it together, trying to figure out where the board would want to have a really strong discussion and try to make some decisions. So here's what I was thinking. Correct me if you've got some other options here. The top one, if you take a look at service reductions, again, this is what the Operations Committee is going to be discussing tomorrow. So they're going to be coming up with a recommendation. I felt it was also important for the Finance Committee to discuss it and see how much money is involved. And so I bring that to your attention. So you can see that if we were going to do a 5% service reduction in 27, it could save us somewhere around 15 million. If we did a 10%, it could save us around 31 million. And then if we went to a full 20%, it's 62 million. So that's one of the big items that I know our board is going to have to talk about, because this is very important for the whole organization and our customers. There's another item that I also wanted to bring to your attention, and it's trying to see if I can find it. Well, if it's not on this particular slide, it might be the last one. It has to do with the capital budget. If you recall, at our last finance meeting, it was toward the end of the meeting, so you may not have recall, but we had the draft transit asset management plan for 10 years. And in that plan, our staff did put together their request in priority order. For their request, clearly it can change. But at that point, last month, it was for $170 million of capital. This year, correct me if I'm wrong, CFO Kelly, I think our capital budget's about 225 million. Is that about right?
It's higher with that with the carry forwards.
Well, with the carry forward, let's set carry forward aside. Okay. So one of the questions then is, what level of capital do you want to go forward? So those are some of the questions I want to ask you. So what I would like to do before we actually vote on this measure that's before us, I wanted to get your thoughts. I know our staff, our CFO, CEO would also like to hear your thoughts. Here are the questions I want to ask you, and then I'll go around alphabetically. Service levels, what are your thoughts? Are you interested in 0 service changes in terms of reductions, 5%, 10%, more? That's your call. The second question would be, if you are interested in service reductions, are you interested in doing perhaps layoffs, furloughs, or other personnel actions like attrition? The third one would be any suggestions, ideas that you have on the capital budget. Do you want it to stay at 170 million? Should we shave it back a little bit to save a little bit more money and reduce our deficit? That would be one question. And then the fourth question, quite frankly, is do you want to go forward? Do you want to start now, the FAIR study? So because it's going to take such a long period of time, do you want to ask our staff to begin it in the next couple of weeks? So I would like to hear from you all. So Vice Chair Arcuri, let's start with you. I hope you don't mind.
The curse of having a last name that begins with the letter A,
Well, I can agree with you. B comes after A. So my first question would be on service levels. Are you interested at all in reducing service? If so, what are your thoughts?
I think we need to look to see where there could be some efficiencies. I know when we spoke with Ms. Johnson recently, she said there are service modifications we can do, which would not be eliminating routes, but perhaps might make things more efficient. We could maybe alter even some where routes go or the timing of them, things like
For the
this.
trips, not the routes.
Yes. So those things I would be interested in exploring, but again, I'd have to know what those were.
Okay.
So I can't say 5%, 7% at this point unless I know
Okay, I
where
understand.
those things would land.
Okay, and so would you consider, if we did take service reductions, are you interested in layoffs, furloughs, or attrition or other personnel actions?
I would be more interested in other personnel actions. Ideally, as I suppose most of us would want to say, to be honest, 0% layoffs, right? RTD things have already been very difficult for RTD with this reorganization. We know for some positions that does not bring good news, and morale is low right now and anxiety is high. So I would prefer to not have to make any other changes due to budgets. That said, if we absolutely must, I hope that layoffs could be less than 5% would be my goal.
It's still, that's also a high number. Okay, but less than 5.
I'm saying like less than that would be my
Okay.
goal. Something that I would be interested in, and I don't know if you would consider this benefits or retirement, but I remember in my career, there were times when state government had to reduce the state's share to our pension plan or our 401k just because of economic situations. That was a possibility. And then sometimes, because we had to keep the pension fund solvent, we had to increase temporarily employee contributions. And so that would be something that I would be interested in studying, because it doesn't actually, lose any jobs.
My
Fair
next question-
increases.
Oh, I'm
fair
sorry. The next item that I'd like to ask is the capital budget. Are you satisfied 170 million? Can we trim it a little bit, or just what are your thoughts?
Again, I'd have to see more data and what it was we wanted to trim, and I'm sorry that this slows everything down, but I have to be honest with you, that's
Nope,
how I
I
feel.
understand. More information. In fact, that is one of the questions that I wanted to ask. Some of these issues are very difficult, and so if you need more information, be specific as to what kind of information that you all need as we go do the round robin, because I understand it's hard to decide, oh yeah, I want to take a 10% service reduction when you don't really have the information as to what does that mean. So, or what trips or routes would be affected.
Question. As Mackey opened up this discussion, they are looking right for authority to go ahead and do some in-depth modeling and work on these issues broadly. And so I would like to give them the authority to do those things. Capital expense, as I recall, was not exactly one of them that was listed in our packet or that she mentioned, but I would be interested in just studying the TAM and things like that to see what is prioritized that should not be changed, or what it would be safe to hold off on for a
Okay,
while.
thank you. And what are your thoughts about a FAIR study? Should we start the FAIR study?
Yes, we should, but I think we have to give guidance to the team on exactly what the goals of the FAIR study are. And again, I think we would need to discuss that, because I don't think just to say, oh, we need to raise revenues a little bit, I don't think that's going to work. When I look at what was done in the past, there were more goals of like making the system-wide more simple or more efficient, things of this nature. Or so now, do we have additional goals? I believe we should increase fares. We are facing the ugly head of inflation, as I recognize, of course, all of our riders do as well, right? We all go to the grocery store, we all pay insurance, we all buy gas. Yeah, so I understand, but we're at a critical junction here at RTD. And I think the people who use the service most frequently should be chipping in a little bit more. And I believe our fares are very modest. We're not proposing to increase the access on demand or accessoride fares. Those were just recently updated. I would also propose that we leave the live fare where it is now too. So those who are of lower income would not be burdened by a fare increase. And I don't know if 10% across the board makes sense, or if we want some fares 10%, maybe some 15, maybe some 20. I think that would require a robust discussion. I'm hopeful when I read how long the equity studies last, as well as the, and I guess that's, I think and I guess Ms. Irving will be discussing this later on in her presentation. I know we have to do certain things when service is changed, and then certain other types of studies when fares are changed. Maybe there's some efficiencies gained if those can be combined somehow. And I know in the past, one of the studies I think took, I don't know, 18 months and one maybe less than that. I'm going to say I'll be optimistic that maybe we could do a fare increase the fourth quarter of 2027,
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Director Curie. Shall we go on to Director Geisinger? Are you still here? Lynn? Lynn?
I'm here.
Okay.
Just had to get unmuted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so here are my questions. Are you interested in any service level reductions, efficiencies? Your call.
Okay, let me go back and thanks for all the work on this. I want to answer the questions that staff has in the packet as well as this.
Good.
And make sure that we're looking at some other things. One thing I've said all along is whatever we do here is not going to fix the long-term situation. And we can't cut our way out of our problems, which means to me, we're going to have to go to the ballot, and everything needs to be done strategically, looking towards going to the ballot. Address fares first. I totally agree with Director Ruscia here. We can look at this, but just saying, that, yeah, we should go ahead and do a full fare study and equity analysis. That's a huge undertaking. I was here when we did it before. It's going to cost us a lot more in 2027 and probably not bring in money until sometime after that. So I do not support that. I'm not sure I support raising fares by much. I think we could look at the airport fares. We have to deal with employees. I think that seniors are paying, should be paying half of the airport fare. And I think we could potentially raise the airport fare, a couple of dollars. It's a pretty good deal. I think that I'm not quite sure. It doesn't sound like we're looking at our fiscal policies. And I felt like there was one there that we should discuss, whether we're hitting, and I apologize, I'm back from vacation. I'm trying to catch up, but the 1.2 goal, it seems to me like, I don't know if that discussion didn't come up in the study session. I think that
deals with debt. Yeah.
Okay. It still is it deals with debt, but it still is a question, I think, in this process. I think that legislative reform, there may be some things that are worth doing. We have a group that works down there, and I think that they've been focused on RTD, and maybe we can get some help there. Refinancing, great. It seemed like that could be helpful, and it's helped in the past. Labor-related expense, certainly don't like layoffs and things like that. Attrition is always best. I think the specifics may be best left to staff, to our GM CEO, but the pension contribution that Director Arcuri mentioned is a worthwhile consideration. Service reductions, I've never liked that we talk about this in terms of a percentage, because at the same time we're bringing on new service with the CTE funding, and we're not to me, we're making adjustments to what we should be doing is making adjustments to routes that or to times and particular service that is not working well. And so I'm not going to pick a percentage here either.
Okay.
I think that let's look at what the specifics are. And I think we saw these at some point. Maybe they came back while I was gone of, what are the hours and services that maybe need a closer look. Capital budget, if we can, it's just about what we can do safely there. I think it's 225 million this year and 170 next year. Is that correct, Ms. Mackey?
Yes.
So it sounds like it's been trimmed. So I don't know, to me that you look at, would I like to cut that? Yes, but would I like to cut that if it involves safety? No, so I think you have to look at the specifics. I certainly, and this may be something coming up to the OSS, I hear a lot about fare enforcement. I know we've made good progress. Our police team is making progress, but I'd like to see what we could do on that, especially on the rail. That would help bring in money. Thanks. That's it.
Okay, thanks.
Unless you have more questions.
No, actually, I think just having a good discussion like this is just excellent. I like that. Thank you. So, Director Kuchenrichter, are you ready to give us your thoughts on the world of budget?
I am ready to give my thoughts. Yes, thank you, Chair Banker, and thank you for all that you've done to prep and get us here. So I appreciate you keeping us organized. Service reduction percentages, I'm not going to give one, and I wish we'd stop saying that word, that phrase.
Okay.
I much prefer service optimization.
Okay.
And to me, I think it, I get that it's somewhat the same thing, but let's trim the fat. What are our worst performing routes at certain times? Where do we have our least ridership? Let's see a list and look at the numbers and then kind of determine as a board or an agency, where we should optimize, and however that shakes out as a percentage, great. I think that's a good starting point. So that's how I'd like to approach it, and that would be helpful for me to make a decision and looking at the data that way.
Okay. Any thoughts on workforce, capital budgets, fare study?
Yes, I have some thoughts. Thank you.
Okay.
So absolutely, let's not even talk about layoffs. I think the agency has been through enough. Very difficult time, a lot of change. So whatever we can do to avoid having to lay off one person, I'm all for that. Whether that's pension, I think furloughs would be difficult, but not filling vacancies, reskilling, whatever it takes. Let's get creative and do whatever we can to avoid
Okay,
layoffs.
I like that. Yeah.
Capital budget, that is, sure, let's defer as much capital budget as we can. But again, I know that we've got, it's not policy methodology to say, a bus has to be replaced every, X miles or X years. But the reality, can we stretch a bus another 2 years? And is that and if we multiply that by 100 buses, what does that look like? What are those numbers? So, is there any low hanging fruit we can just kind of defer for a year or two en masse, and then those numbers can start to get sizable? So I would like to see proposals in that way. That would be helpful. What's the other one? The
other one would be fare study. Yeah.
So, my North Star continues to be ridership, and Director Geisinger said it, fare enforcement. I know the data says that we're doing a great job of fare enforcement, but I feel, and I'm sure we are, but the reality is that I don't get fare checked ever if I'm not on the A line. So I think fare enforcement could be improved, honestly. I am for considering increasing the price of like eco passes, neighborhood passes, kind of group passes. I would like to see how we can. I mean, I heard Director Rusha say we're high in terms of individual pass compared to other agencies. And I know every agency is unique in its own way, but I'd like to see how our prices compare to other agencies. I I I really don't want to increase individual fares because again, ridership is what is most important to me.
What about fare to the airport or Broncos ride or any special event fare?
I'm interested in understanding more about like special event, what it would look like having the cost of the event included in a pass. You know, if that could be positive to us, I'm all for it. And I know that would probably take a lot of work. The airport, I'm not necessarily for that. Because again, it kind of goes to ridership, and I feel like I know the A line is a big number for us, but I don't think we're getting the ridership to the airport that we actually should be. So yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, any other thoughts? Concerns?
No, just
ideas?
thank you to everyone.
Okay.
I know a lot.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your thoughts. I appreciate that. Director Guzman. Would you
Thank
like
you,
to
Madam
share
Chair.
your ideas?
So sorry, I'm going back and forth between three different documents right now. The one that you sent us, which thank you for preparing, but is prepared, as you said, outside of the bounds of our fiscal policy, with a lot of ifs. For example, page 1, the first line, grants and CTE, and then requires legislation change. There's no guarantee there. And so I'm trying to understand what we've received, and I've been looking at this. So I've got a few questions about what was prepared and sent to us ahead of this meeting. And I don't know if I'm assuming that now that it's been shown, it will be included as an appendix to the meeting tonight.
I think it
for
will.
public transparency. So here's what I would like to say. I think we need to do a lot of homework and research before we get to your three key questions. I'm not interested in layoffs. I don't think furloughs are fair. You don't work for free. I don't work for free. I don't want people here working for free. If they're going to work, they need to get paid. And if we are not going to have them working, then are we charging them paid time off or holiday pay because we're telling them they have to take time off, which seems illegal and unfair, or just withholding payment? I don't get that. And I'm a labor person, and I wouldn't do it to anybody, and I don't want it done to me. So that's a hard no for me.
Okay.
I will talk about the pension. The last 3 years as a director, I have been told that because we had cash available and on hand in abundance, we were able to make a higher than normal payment, or a higher than payment than we normally would.
Okay.
And we did that on purpose to surpass what the requirements were according to the stakeholders and the fiduciaries of the pension plan, to exceed that in the case of a year like this year, where we would have to lower what we would authorize to put into the pension. And I would like to know what's going on with the pension and have more information about that so that I can make a more accurate decision. But it pains me every year to think that there was going to come a year I would be on the board where we would have this problem, and here we are. So I think we should talk about the pension rather than layoffs or furloughs.
Okay, sounds good.
Not service cuts. Quit using that language, please, everybody. I agree. I am third, fourth, or fifthing that, wherever we're at. I think we should talk about the efficiencies laid out, as Director Gutschenritter intimated, and Director Geisinger before him. Where can we be more efficient with our routing? Where are people going to go, and where do they need to access our system from? Capital budget, you know what got us into some trouble in the time that I've been on the board? A previous board saying we should not do capital improvements and keep our system in a state of good repair. So it seems short-sighted. I don't know who said it earlier, but the penny wise and whatever that thing is, that nonsense, you're trying to save the money by not doing the investment. of not allowing the system to break, but keeping it in good order and good repair, which has been paramount to being where we're at with being able to provide additional services now. So let's look at efficiencies and let's look at what we're doing with capital budget and keep in line with our federal requirements so we can continue to draw down federal funds to do that work, and not throw off and kick down the road capital improvements that we need before we start expending according to our fiscal policy. Sorry, it's a separate document. We need to follow the fiscal policy of the agency, which is clearly directing the board and the agency not to do that, but in order to do, let me find it here under expenditures. Sorry, this conversation is all over the place and so am I. We need to align our expenditures with strategic plans, and we need to make sure that we have all of our asset management policy being followed. Capital expenditure and expense fiscal year carry forwards are to be limited to a project or for 3 years, but we also need to make sure that we maintain our state of, here it is, capital improvement policy, which is linked to expenditure. We must maintain it. RTD will, not may, not might, we will maintain our assets in a state of good repair. Period. And capital asset investment decisions are to be prioritized. The priority has to be given to capital projects. We don't do it any other way. And I know some people are all about the vibes and about the feels. Clearly, we heard enough of that during public conversation. But I want to be clear about this. This is a dollars and cents conversation. There's a clear logic here, delineation. So I'm over the vibes and feels, and I want to get to the pennies and get it done. So when we're talking about this, I really don't want to do anything that's theoretical or outside of our bounds and follow our policies, which means every member of the board should probably go back and review the 2026 fiscal policy that's currently active and understand what we're expected to do. As far as the staff recommendation, CFO Mackey, I apologize we are keeping you off of your vacation. Thank you for being here with us. GM CEO Johnson, I know this was prepared within our fiscal policy guidelines. I'm not comfortable touching fares until I know what you want to do with them and what the recommendation there is. The last time a fare policy was undertaken, we knew what we were doing, reducing fares and simplifying the process. This is increasing. So to Director Larson's earlier point, if you want to increase it by 20% across the board or whatever number you throw out, a quarter, 50 cents, it doesn't really matter to me. I need to know that before I'm willing to approve any kind of fare study, because that will impact what we're doing. And it's not just people of color. It's not just minority populations. The other part of that FTA circular deals with the equity involved in disproportionate impact to low income peoples. And it's clearly defined in the FTA circular. And the reasons that we have to do it are so that we don't price out people. And with respect to Director Arcuri's point, all of our paratransit service fares are directly linked to our regular base fares. Our discounts are linked to our regular base fares. So there are impacts beyond simply charging an extra quarter for everybody in the whole district to increase the fare for services. And it will have roll-on and knock-on effects. And so I'll say here with this, in terms of looking at anything that we can do, and Director Banker, Chair Banker, your direction at the beginning of the year was to look at everything. Throw all the spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. That's what you said during our retreat. I heard you. I was listening and taking notes. We need to look at the policies that we've made mistakes on in the last couple of years, up to and including the bus wraps, up to and including what we have canceled. And we need to make sure that we have what we need to be able to operate the system, both short-term and long-term. So yes, go after the legislature and see if we can increase what we can collect in taxes. Go after the legislature and see if they'll get us out of 44th place in the nation in funding public transportation. That's in the fiscal policy already. Can we just follow the fiscal policy? Let's look at what that looks like and do those things. Thanks.
Director Guzman, thank you very much. I'm hoping to get everybody's comments in before we take a cart break. And so it sounds like everybody at this point is asking for more information, but the information you're giving so far is very helpful. So if any other Are you comfortable moving on to our next director? Because at about 7:30, we're going to have to do a break. I'd like to move on to Director Larson. Thank you. Director Larson, what are your thoughts? Tell us
Yeah, my thoughts
balance the budget.
about the budget is that we should basically run down our reserves as much as possible, not balance the budget this year or in 2027 or in 2028 if and then run down our reserves as much as possible. That should be kind of the primary, the best option. Now, I don't know how limited we are, and I think we should push the envelope in terms of the rating agencies and be willing to accept some downgrades for a couple years. But I want to absolutely minimize any change that we would do that would affect the quality of the service that we can deliver in any way at all. So I think that it turned out, I think balancing the budget is something we're going to have to do eventually. I think we should plan to do it in 2029 after we have run a ballot measure that will hopefully make it a lot easier. And I think, with that in mind, in the meantime, we need to deliver the best possible service that can be delivered and take some risks on the kind of the bond rating side to do that and basically put all our chips on 2028. That's really what I think we should do. But down to the specifics, I mean, I think I don't really agree with the concept that we should have to do a study to raise fares equitably. It doesn't make any sense to me. But if we did, I think we should set a time limit on it that makes it so that we could raise fares in 2027. But I basically think that, I think we should risk what, the lawsuits or whatever could happen and move forward with some significant fare increase that increases our 2027 revenue. And if we want to do a study, we can do one, but I would just say it should only take 3 months and not be extended past that. I think all of that said, I'm not sure how far we can push the envelope in terms of our reserves. So if I was looking at all of the items that are sort of suggested and that at least to me seem realistic, I guess the last one I would do is changing the capital budget. I really think that has gotten us into an enormous amount of trouble, and it really just seems potentially disastrous. I mean, I personally lived through the disaster of the rail burn issues, and I don't want to risk any of that at all. The pensions thing seems to have potential. I mean, it seems like some of the other things on that list could be done without compromising service, but I think we need to deliver better service than we're currently delivering. And I think that means we don't cut any service hours. We optimize for sure. We optimize to maximize ridership, but we don't, we deliver a better service than we've been doing and put all our chips on 2028. And if at that point we're delivering as best possible service as we can, pushing the envelope financially, optimizing our service, and absolutely minimizing anything that we're doing, as much as possible, cuts in anything that we're doing that actually delivers service to people. And in 2028, people don't want to vote for any more money, then the jig is up, but we have to balance the budget, and 2029 will be whatever it has to be. That's the strategy I would use to the greatest degree possible. And I would try not to do layoffs. If we have to cut something, it would be attrition. And whatever else the items that management deems would have the least impact on actual service delivery to our customers over the course of the next 2 years.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Director Larson. And last but not least, Director Rusha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Should I just go in the order you asked the questions?
It's your call. At this
Okay.
point, I think just a good discussion. And keep in mind, we've got about 6 minutes or so, you know, before we take a break. But tell us what your thoughts are, how to balance our $215 million deficit. How do we take care of that?
Yeah, if only I were qualified to answer that question.
Yeah, 5 minutes, please.
Okay, well, I'll answer the questions, and hopefully we can just respect that I waited my turn. On service levels, so I cannot answer similar to what other people said, 0%, 5%, 20%, because I don't know what those percentages actually mean. Like, is that 5% across the board? Is it lowest performing routes only? Frequency hours? Are we just talking about one type of service? Like, is it FlexRide? You know, is staff going to come back and say, oh, well, it turns out, I don't know, commuter is really expensive to run, whatever, and we want to cut the M line. So I don't know what that means. So just like the JBC at the Capitol doesn't just blindly say, oh, sure, we'll take $120 million from Medicaid, like without knowing exactly what it is they're reducing or what changes they're making to provider rates. Like, we just need to have something more tangible to give direction on. We approved a budget based on an SOP with an understanding of our current system. So I wouldn't know how to blindly approve a budget for next year for service if I didn't have a sense of what that service was going to look like. I'm also, and this has been said, but like if we cut service, that also might affect certain staff positions. So that was information I would want to know. I do think that given that we have board approved service standards, that staff should follow those in their recommendations. And if they want to make an exception to board approved policy, that should just be identified and justified. Like if there's an equity concern, it's a major workforce area, or it's a new route and it still needs to, you know, be given time to breathe a little bit. But we do have board policies, and I think we need to stick to those as best as we can to be fair, and not let this descend into like politics survives or make decisions based on whether or not something is run by a contractor. I also agree that, you know, where possible, we want to look at maybe trimming some service, but not eliminating whole routes. On the workforce strategy, if we paused the 9% non-represented employer retirement contribution for a year, that is like about $12 million in savings. If we do 5 furlough days, that's for salaried staff, that's about $2.3 million in savings. I had dialogue with staff about furloughs. I prefer furloughs to layoffs. I hear staff when they say this could be really logistically complex. I'm sensitive to that. I also just like, it's worth pointing out, staff also came to us today and said, hey, I think we could, you know, generate another $1 million to $4 million in ad revenue. So we did ask staff to like go find alternative revenue and get creative, and they are. So I just ask that, you know, we consider that as well. I want to know what ATU's position is, like on what concessions they could make for their members. Like, what do they think is a good idea to preserve jobs and service? You know, maybe there are overtime reductions instead of layoffs, but I don't know what their position is. Same with the Fraternal Order of Police and our police union. So I have some ideas, but I'm hesitant to be overly confident without understanding what our frontline employees feel and what they're comfortable with and what suggestions they might have as well. And then I would just add that, like, when possible, like any benefits adjustments or potential furloughs should be structured so that the lower paid employees don't take the same financial hit as our higher paid employees. I think that is a more fair way to do it, and there's precedent for that if we look at other public agencies. On the question of capital budget funding, I don't know what level of funding we should set for next year's budget because I'm not qualified to answer that. I do think that we can't solve an operating deficit by creating a capital deficit. We kind of did that already and we got into some trouble. It didn't work out well. I do think that like staff should present a budget and be very transparent about a capital budget and be very transparent about what they want to, purchase and why. And that also includes potential projects that they want to let go and say, we're not going to do that now, or we're not going to do it at all. Like there should be justification for that. And I do think, we talked about our fiscal policy. We should add a clear rule about multi-year projects. Like we
Yes.
have this, almost done. I don't think it's a good idea to just say, here's $150 million for a project. Please finish it within 5 years.
Yes.
And come back to us if you run out of money. We need more insight. That was also something the state auditor flagged, and now would be a good time to address that. On the FAIR study, I said what I said. Just want to add, part of the FAIR study is like also about evaluating our products. So we haven't really discussed our college fair media rules around the 3-hour pass. Broncos ride was mentioned. But I'd like to discuss our products. Like, should we consider like making the airport fair be good for a few days and not one day, like, or weekly passes? Like in New York, like all like subway and local bus rides are free for the remainder of the week if you spend $35, which is 12 paid trips, within a 7-day period, right? Like I do think that this is a good first step. But I think that if we like end on this note, that's skipping steps. So like I said before, I don't want to direct staff to go and study right now without with the board aligning on goals and having staff be part of that interactive conversation. So with that, I actually don't know how I vote on this motion if the directive on fairs is not clear, but I suppose I'll process that over our break. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That was very specific. I like that. Okay, with that, I see we've got a couple of other directors that want to chime in, but here's what I'm going to ask from Director Nicholson and Director Pagliari. We need to take a break, and I wanted to give our committee members as much time as possible to give us some guidance. So I will call on you, but I'm asking you for very short comments so we can take a break and then move on also to the rest of our board meeting, committee meeting, because we've got more work to accomplish. And before we leave tonight, in fact, before we leave for break, so board directors don't go anywhere. We still need to vote on the measure that's in front of us. So very short comments. Director Nicholson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I think just to address some of your questions very briefly, what I would say is I think that we need a pathway to fiscal sustainability, by which I can say that, if staff is telling us we need to make a 20% reduction over the course of some period of time, I think we do need to do that. I don't know if that needs to be phased in 1 year or 18 months or 24 months. But I do think our target has to be that by 2030, we are very clearly running in the black rather than the red. I think under workforce strategy, I very much oppose furloughs. I think we should try to target certainly for represented workers, attrition, and I would probably oppose any kind of reduction in force for our represented staff. I do think that any good, effective transportation company can't be afraid of change and can't be afraid of layoffs. So I think that if there are optimizations that we can make to make RTD a leaner, more effective, more focused organization, if we can change how we're operating, the public is expecting us to do that. So I firmly believe that we should be willing to explore that to the degree that staff thinks it can be helpful. In terms of the capital budget, I'm going to defer to staff on that one. I think we need to do the stuff we need to do. And if there are things that can be postponed effectively, we should look at that. But I'm not the expert there. In terms of the FAIR study, I do think we should go out and do an RFP. It'll take a really long time just to find a firm to put, to help us put together a fare study, or if we're just doing it internally. But I think if we want to do a full scale reevaluation of fares and look at things like differences in pricing depending upon rail versus bus versus commuter rail versus light rail, and really top to bottom review, that's going to require a significant process. So I do think we should start the clock on that. But we need to make major changes, and we shouldn't be afraid of major changes.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Pagliari, you're there, you're up. I see your hand up.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Been in transit. I just have 4 quick things to say to answer your question. Thank you, Chair, for the time. For number one, I really think that we shouldn't cut anything more than 10%. I mean, really shooting for 0 or 5%, given that we're betting on 2028. Number two, I think we should cut managers, not operators. Operators are our greatest assets. Our represented employees are very hard to rehire once we let them go. It's much easier to hire our management. They're much more highly paid. So I think we should not cut operators and instead cut management. And for number three, I think do not cut the maintenance budget, because as Director Larson said, we really don't want another shutdown of our rail system. And I'll add a number 4 as well. I really think we should bet on 2028 and try to make as few changes and really provide the best services possible up until then. And I hope that was short enough. Thank you very much.
Okay, real quick, are you interested in pursuing a fare study, which will take a minimum of 1 year to get the answers?
Honestly, I think that if we raise fare simply by how much inflation has been had, then it's equitable. We just need to apply the same multiplier to all fares. So if we, raise fares by 2% or 200% across the board, there should be no difference in impacts given the fact that we're just changing all the fares at the same time. We don't need a study for that. We can do a study later on if we want to change the difference in fares. But if we want to raise the airport fare to $20 and everything else by 2, I think that's plenty equitable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for all of this information. Excuse me, I think it's very important. So before we leave, we need to vote on the main motion, and that is to direct our staff to go forward and basically bring us back more information, pursue the options that our CFO has outlined for us, probably an hour ago. And continue this budget discussion. So are there any no votes? Maybe I should start there.
I'm going to be a no.
Okay. Do you want to take a recorded vote? Let me take a recorded vote then real quick. So let's do Director Arcuri.
Yes.
Okay. Director Geisinger.
We're voting on whether to start a fair and equity study at all?
No, we're voting on the motion of asking our staff to go forward with financial modeling and inclusion on fares, legislative reforms, refinancing opportunities, and labor expense changes. It's basically to bring us back more information and to continue working on the budget.
But when you look back further at it, it says evaluation and modeling for fair and past price increases includes objectives, fair, steady, and equity analysis, and further elasticity modeling. So if that's in there, I'm a no vote.
Okay.
I don't think we need, I think we need more information. I think as several people said, we need to give more specific direction.
Okay, but also excuse me, keep in mind that it's basically bringing more information back to the Finance Committee, which of course then will go to the board. And at that point, we can decide.
Point of order.
Yes, Director Guzman.
The motion was made based on the recommended action, and the
Yes.
recommended action clearly states that we would be asking them to start that. So I think we either need to quickly amend this so you get a yes vote, if that's what you are looking for, Madam Chair, or we need to finish taking the roll call.
I would like to finish taking the roll call, but again, the recommended staff action is, let me repeat it so everybody remembers, for the Board of Directors to authorize the GM CEO to advance deeper financial modeling and inclusion in the 2027 proposed budget on fare and pass pricing adjustments, legislative reforms for additional revenue, refinancing opportunities, and labor expense changes. This is asking our staff for more information. We're not voting yes or no on any of these measures. We're asking our staff to continue to pursue the information. So, Director Geisinger?
Again, it says further down, it includes a fair study and equity analysis. So, I mean, I'm happy to make an amendment, but right now I'm a no vote.
Okay. Director Guchenritter?
I'm a no vote for the same reason.
Okay, Director Guzman?
No.
No. Director Larson?
Yes.
Yes. Director Rusha?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, and I am a yes. So that fails.
May I
So
make
quite
an amendment?
frankly, I'm sorry.
May I offer an amendment?
Sure, yes. Not quite sure we're following Robert's rules, but I think at this point, we need to figure out whether or not we want our staff to move forward on bringing budget options to us and bringing us more information.
So
I
point of
think
order.
this is, excuse me, let me ask Mr. Kroll first. Mr. Kroll, you've got your hand up. Would you like to give us a little?
Yeah, at this juncture, you would need to make a motion to reconsider, and that would have to be done by the individuals. At least the person making the motion to reconsider would have to have been one of those individuals on the prevailing side.
Okay, so Director Geisinger, would you like to make a motion to reconsider?
I would.
Okay. Should we take a vote? May we
Does
reconsider?
that have a second? It needs a
I
second.
will second that, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Motion to reconsider. Any no votes? Okay, so that passes. Director Geisinger, what would you like to propose?
I've got to go back and look at the specific language for the board to authorize. To advance deeper financial modeling and inclusion in the 2027 proposed budget. I would say to advance deeper financial modeling on the following tactics. I'm just not ready to say let's include these generally without more specifics on the fair, and certainly not starting a fair study and equity analysis. So if someone else has some suggestion here, I guess on the fair and past pricing adjustments, I'm not saying we're going to include those in the budget. We're just asking for deeper financial modeling.
Correct.
And no fair study and equity analysis.
It's not specifically in here. It's just for additional information.
Well, it's in there.
Madam Chair, sorry, may I offer a suggestion?
Director Rusha.
Is that okay? I'm sorry, Director Geisinger. What if we just struck the first bullet that says fair and past pricing adjustments? I think all the conversation tonight has given the staff a signal of what we're interested in and what next steps we want to take. That would keep the fair conversation separate while also allowing staff to model the rest of the items in the memo. So just be striking that first bullet in the motion. If that was okay with Director Geisinger.
Director Geisinger, would you accept that?
Maybe we should ask our GM CEO what they need. I'm not saying they can't look at fairs, but I'm saying it for me. I'm not ready to say include those in the budget or start a fair study and equity analysis.
Well, also FYI, by the time the information would come to us, if we did go forward with a fair study, it's going to take between a year and a half to get the information. So
Right.
it may not even affect 2027.
Right.
But Ms. Johnson, GM CEO, would you like to add something to our discussion? Yes, Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you very much, Committee Chair Banker, and thank you, Director Geisinger. As relates to staff's intent, I have heard you loudly and clearly, and basically this call out with revenue growth, increased fares, and past programming was more or less ensuring that there was a clear-cut understanding that any type of adjustment with fares would basically entail a fare study and equity analysis pursuant to FTA Circular 4702.1B. And so basically, as we go forward to the point that Committee Chair Banker raised, we would delve a little deeper, recognizing that anything that we would do subsequent to that will require board action and in turn require an FSEA. And so to the point that you're talking about, there could be extrapolation or deletion, I would say, about the fare study equity analysis if we're just doing a deeper dive and keeping in mind that in the discussion item where we're talking about the different elements surrounding fare study equity analyses and things of the like, that we did have our fare consultant work, over, I don't know, it was inordinate amount of time pulling together numbers that were estimated based upon potential fare revenue, recognizing we can't leverage it. So I'm talking in circles now, but the point of the matter is to ensure this comes to fruition. I am amenable to striking, the verbiage that talks about a fare study and equity analysis, recognizing we can't do anything absent that.
Okay.
Does that, okay, thanks.
Director Geisinger, are you satisfied with that?
So that would mean you would bring some ideas back to us. Is that right?
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes, please.
Yes, basically that's what this would entail. This is giving us alignment around what staff will spend its time on as we do further financial modeling, recognizing that a lot of these things, case in point, I'll use an example, if you guys just let me indulge for a moment. Quite naturally, when we talk about different aspects around legislation and so forth, I'm speaking a little out of school, but have had a conversation with Committee Chair Banker and Chair O'Keefe that we would need a legislative program and that we would do that earlier rather than later. So then basically there's an understanding of what the path forward would be relative to anything that we do. So this is very analogous to the same thing. We wouldn't be doing anything absent having board direction about a fare study and equity analysis and ensuring that there was alignment about the goals. Before, with simplicity, affordability, and ease of usage, it wouldn't be any different if we actually got to that stage going forward. Thank you.
Okay, so Ms. Johnson, let me ask a clarifying question. We would not be doing a fare study unless it was brought to the board and we specifically authorized a fare study.
Basically, in the sense that you would be authorizing us relative to fares and go out and discern what might be appropriate to ensure that we weren't creating a disproportionate impact or
right.
Yes.
But my question is, we would have a future measure to vote on to say yes, proceed.
Most definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Director Geisinger?
I'm not quite sure where we left this. Do we need?
Yes, I know. We have to reconsider.
What was Ms. Johnson suggesting?
Director Arcuri, I see you've got your hand up. Would you like to add something to the discussion?
Yes,
And
thank you.
we need to try to wrap this up because we do have to take a break for our CART folks. So, Director Arcuri?
Director Geisinger, would it help your amendment if we asked staff to tell us what kinds of things they need to hear from us to develop a fair and equity study? What do we need to do? What's the timeline? Things of that nature, just the nuts and bolts. Would that help you if we could make that part of what they present to us here in the near future?
Well, I would also like to, if I could interrupt here, the question that I asked our CEO was whether or not we would have a specific vote in the next couple of weeks directing staff to either conduct a fare study with those kinds of limitations or questions or not. And so this is not voting on a fare study. This is voting on bringing the board more information. Fare study, measure, resolution would come to us at another time, and then we could decide, what other elements we want in the fare study. Is that satisfactory, Director Arcuri?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Director Ruscia, I think this will be our last question before we try to figure out how we're going to vote and proceed.
I have lost track. Do we have an amendment on Do we have
No.
an amendment on the table? Or we're
No,
just
you had
discussing
suggested
reconsider?
something. I'm not quite sure,
Okay.
Director Geisinger.
I'm just gonna go ahead and make the motion to amend, and we'll see where the chips fall. I would like to move that we strike the first bullet in the list of tactics, which says fair and past pricing adjustments.
Okay.
Just for now.
Is there a second?
Come back next week.
I have a question.
Uh,
Does, may I ask a question?
Yes, Director Geisinger, I don't see your hand up, but I have limited computer technology here. So, yes. Director Geisinger? Yes, go for it.
Does that keep this topic alive for the staff, Ms. Johnson?
I would make the assumption, yes, if we're basically deleting that first bullet contingent upon what the vote was, it was 5-2.
You would make the assumption that keeps the fair proposal alive for further study.
So when you say further study, I think there needs to be modification, because what we're seeking is direction about what we will further model as we go forward. So what I would offer up, at the risk of stepping into your discussion here, is that there could be a separate item to set a date certain where we come back and have that as a standalone versus what we're doing here. So the staff, we can collectively start the foundational pieces of building out the budget.
Great. In that case, I will second Director Ruscha's. It's like.
Okay, Director Guzman, quickly.
Sorry, I was waiting to try and make this much easier. It's the word inclusion that is the problem in this motion. So if we strike the word inclusion and replace it with and inform, strike in the 2027 proposed budget, we would be fine. We would strike 2 words and add the word inform. Because it's the inclusion part that makes it difficult for everything that follows. They can do the financial modeling, and it will inform the board and the proposed budget with the information that we need.
Okay. Is that a motion?
There's one that's been made and
there is one.
seconded, so unless that's withdrawn
Okay.
or friendly amendment changed that way, then we would be fine, but that's a problem.
Okay, thank you. Let's vote. Let's vote on what's before us. Okay, so at this point, the motion is to take the measure that we have, the recommended action, and strike fair and past pricing adjustments. Staff will come back with more information in the next few weeks, next Finance Committee, also to the full board, with additional information on how to balance the budget. These are the items without fair and past adjustments. Although our CEO has also said we'll probably get some additional information, we won't be voting on it. But at this point, it's just instructing our staff to get us more information so we can balance the budget. Okay, so the amended version then without that
Well,
item.
You need to vote on the amendment on whether or not to include it in the actual action. So you gotta
Okay.
take
First,
procedural vote on
correct,
the amendment
okay,
before returning
so,
to
should we take a roll call vote on the amendment, striking the words fair and past pricing adjustments? No. Okay, so though, any no votes? Okay, thank you. Main motion. Once again, Board of Directors to authorize GM CEO to advance deeper financial modeling and inclusion in the 27 proposed budgets on legislative reforms, refinancing opportunities, labor expense changes. Any no votes? Okay, it passes. Thank you. Okay, let's take a break. What time is it? It's about 10 to 8. Can we, Mr. Kroll, you think 5 after 8 or 8 o'clock?
Yeah, I was gonna suggest 8:05.
8:05. Okay, see you back in about, I don't know, about roughly 10 minutes. Thank you all. Thank you for all the information. Okay. Hi, Jack.
Hey there. Oh, hey. Oh, thanks.
Okay, it's almost ready to start. We've got another minute. And I know we still have a lot to cover tonight, but at least no more voting, so that part's good. Okay, should we start? It's 8:05. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, hi, everyone. If you're back from break. We still have quite a bit to do, but at least the rest of the items are for discussion purposes. So one of the things I have to mention, we have 4 items on our discussion agenda. I have found out that we need to change the order of 2 of the items. So we're going to have impacts of window coverage to advertising second, and the on-vehicle advertising program management third. Okay, but first, I would like to ask Kelly Mackey, Chief Financial Officer, and Brendan Morgan, Director for Treasury, to present the next item to the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Before I turn it over to Mr. Morgan, I'd like to briefly frame the refunding strategies we're evaluating so the committee has a clear picture of what is in scope. Tonight's discussion centers on several proposed debt modifications, which are subject to market conditions and future rate movements. First, we are looking at a tax-exempt current refunding of the fast track sales bonds across Series 2013A, 2016A, and 2017A. These are approaching call dates, and current interest rate levels create a window where refinancing could generate meaningful savings if the market remains favorable. Second, we're evaluating a tax-exempt current refunding of Series 2017B executed on a delayed delivery basis. That structure allows us to lock in advantageous rates now while completing this transaction at a later date, which provides flexibility in timing and execution. Third, we are exploring tender and refunding strategies for the more recent Series 2019A and 2021A bonds. A tender offer could allow certain holders to sell their bonds back to us, creating opportunities to retire high-cost debt and improve cash flow depending on participation levels. All of these tools, current refunding, forward or delay delivery, and tender strategies, give us options to responsibly restructure our debt and reduce costs if conditions continue to align. With that overview, I'll turn it over to Mr. Morgan to walk you through the details, the financial modeling behind each scenario, and the potential savings.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Morgan, are you online here?
Yes, good evening. I am online. Are you able to see the presentation right now that I'm sharing?
Okay, thank you. Go for it. Thank you.
Okay, great. And Chair Banker, you're able to see this PowerPoint that I'm sharing, right?
Yes, yes, we can see it, the outline.
Great, thank you, thank you. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I'm Brendan Morgan, Director of Treasury for RTD. I'm very excited here to discuss this potential financing transaction that CFO Mackey just introduced. As you all know, the financial industry loves jargon, so we've put together this sort of definitions slide to assist with translating some of this bond market jargon into understandable everyday terms that we all use in our everyday lives. I'm not going to read through all of these definitions for you. We don't need to go through all of them right now, but hopefully it'll be helpful as you all review these slides over the coming days and weeks. You've got this to refer back to, and hopefully it will answer some of your questions. I would like to highlight a few of these definitions just for this evening's discussion. The first word I'm going to, these are in alphabetical order, by the way. So the first word I just want to touch on is refunding. Refunding here, as you see on the slide, is similar to refinancing a mortgage to get a lower interest rate with better terms. So anytime you hear me talk about refunding, you can just think of the word refinancing, and we're essentially talking about the same thing. Next one is tender offer. That phrase there, tender offer, is an offer for bondholders to sell their bonds back. In this case, sell them back to RTD. All right, and then the last one I'll touch on here is just forward delivery. So you'll see on the slide here, forward delivery is similar to locking in a mortgage rate today, but not actually signing and receiving the loan until some later date. These are three concepts that we'll discuss in the coming slides this evening. So as Kelly mentioned here, in July, we plan to bring a bond resolution to the Finance Committee as well as to the RTD Board to consider, which would authorize a refunding by issuing two series of bonds. It would be called Series 2026A and Series 2026B Fast Tracks bonds. The 2026A bonds would be issued to fund a current refunding or refinancing of Fast Tracks bonds Series 2013A, 2016A, and 2017A. These 2026A bonds would also be issued to fund the purchase price of tendered Fast Tracks bonds for Series 2019A and 2021A. Those are two particular series that we've identified as being probably the best candidates where investors may be interested in participating in a tender offer. And that again ties back to that definition that we mentioned earlier, tender offer. And lastly, these 2026A bonds, the last use of these funds would be to fund the costs of issuance. So that's to pay all the professionals that work with us to do these bond transactions. So the lawyers and advisors, the bankers, etc. So the Series 2026B bonds, these would be issued to fund a current refunding of the Fast Tracks sales tax bonds Series 2017B on a delayed delivery basis. It would also fund the costs of executing this transaction. As far as characteristics of these two new bond issues, they would have a tax-exempt fixed rate of interest. There would be no debt service reserve fund involved. The senior manager of the 2026 A and B bonds and dealer manager would be Wells Fargo. We would also have Stifel and Loop Capital as co-managers helping to sell these bonds, these proposed bonds. As far as the tender, solicitation, and purchase goes here, RTD would issue a tender offer to purchase Fast Tracks bonds Series 2019A and Series 2021A from bondholders. These bonds are unique because they pay a taxable interest rate and they can be refunded with tax-exempt interest rates, which translates to lower interest rates for RTD. Current market conditions provide the opportunity to reduce both interest expense and principal outstanding for RTD. A side benefit here is that a refunding with tax-exempt bonds increases the probability greatly that RTD will be able to again refund these bonds, these new bonds, in the future for additional savings. All right, speaking of savings, that's everybody's favorite topic here on slide 6. So this transaction, if executed today, would save RTD an estimated $38 million between 2026 and 2046. On a net present value basis, the savings is $37 million or 8.5% of debt refunded. We've structured this transaction in a way that the savings would be targeted mostly for 2027, with minor savings every year thereafter through 2046. These numbers assume approximately 10% of the tender offer is accepted of all the bondholders agree to tender those bonds back to us. RTD has done tender offers twice before, and we've had varying degrees of success. You know, it's completely up to the bondholders if they want to participate, but we've seen close to 20% success rate. These were doing a second pass on this tender offer, so we're estimating about 10% of the bondholders may participate today. So all these savings numbers, of course, this is all subject to change in interest rates. The participation rate of the tendered bondholders is also out of our control, but very important for this transaction. So you'll see these numbers move around a bit. But in a nutshell, this transaction has the potential to lower annual interest payments, reduce total interest paid, and improve long-term financial flexibility for RTD. For those of you that like to get into the numbers, we've got this table here on the right side of this slide. On the left-hand column, you'll see every year, this is every year that there's a maturity for these bonds from 2026 through 2046. And if you look all the way over to the right-hand column, you'll see the total cash flow savings every year. So how much less would we have to pay every year under this transaction, the way it's structured right here. And if you focus on 2027, that's where you see the majority of the savings there, over $37 million in 2027, with a small trail of a few $1,000s every single year following that. So what's next? Well, next steps include coming back to the Finance and Planning Committee in July, on July 14th, with a bond resolution. The resolution would give authority to General Manager and CEO Johnson, as well as CFO Mackey, to go ahead and execute this transaction within certain parameters that ensure the transaction can only be done in a way that's economically beneficial for RTD. That resolution would be considered then in July 28th by the Board of Directors. And assuming the board approves, we would then move on with selling these bonds. Around August 18th, we would actually go to market to sell these bonds, both the 2026A and 2026B bonds. Next step then would be closing and delivery of the new bonds. So that would happen around September 8th. We would close the 2026A bonds, and we would have a preliminary closing for the 2026B bonds, because as discussed earlier, those would be done with that forward delivery, which means the bonds will get priced and sort of everything locked in this year, but then they will not close until next year. And that's just a function of the redemption provisions of the bonds that exist. We're not allowed to call them back until next year. So that's why that is unique there. So as the asterisk on the bottom says here, tentative and subject to change, and if staff recommendation is approved by the board. So with all of that said and out of the way, I know that was a lot in a short amount of time, but we're certainly happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morgan. That's very interesting, very hopeful. It's very nice to be able to see something where we can save some money on our bonds and put some money into our budget. Do we have any questions or comments, folks? Anything? Director Guzman.
I'll just be really quick. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is what I was looking for in all of this that was coming to us. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Director Arusha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to staff for this presentation. The screen is now at the end, so hold on while I flip back to the packet. I won't get into details, but so does this refunding extend any bond maturities beyond the original payoff dates? I heard you when you say we would pay less in interest overall, but does that make sense? Are we going to pay more over the term by refinancing?
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So the easy answer to your question is no, we will not pay more. And also, we will not be extending the final payments on these loans. Overall, we'll pay $38 million less, and we'll still pay it off in the same amount of time.
Okay, excellent. Director Curie.
I have another question, if I may.
Okay.
Thanks. So
yes, please.
Thank you. So thank you for that. It's been a long night, and I didn't have a long enough snack break. So thank you for that gracious answer. This feels like an aggressive timeline. I don't know if it is, but if market conditions change between now and August, do you have any thoughts about that? Do we have a plan B, or are we confident that the chips will fall where we want them to?
Mr. Morgan?
Yes, thank you for that question. That's another good question. So there's a lot of things that can impact a transaction like this that are outside of RTD's control, like just generally interest rates available in the market. So I think we're in a good position. Things could change for the better or for the worse. These particular bonds that we're looking to, the three main bonds that we're looking at refunding here, the 2013As, 16As, and 2017As, they're sort of the meat and potatoes. But the 2016 and 2017s, those have call dates later this year. So we're sort of, we're not able to legally close this transaction before August. So there's nothing the board can do to accelerate this. We're simply looking to execute it as soon as we can legally execute it, if the board were to approve, to eliminate that sort of risk of interest rates moving against us. So I think we're in as good position as we can be, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Director Arcuri?
Thank you. You mentioned in the last slide that something happens August of 2027. I can't remember the phrase now. When closing and delivery, okay. When would RTD actually experience the 37 million in savings for 2027? Would that be like September, October?
Mr. Morgan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, that's another good question. So the 37 million would come to RTD essentially when we make our payments. We make payments on these bonds in June and December. So that's when the cash flow would be recognized. The cash flow savings would be recognized in 2027.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Director Arcuri, did you have one? Okay, Director Geisinger.
Just to say, great job, Mr. Morgan and Ms. Mackey. It was, I know you put a lot of work into this. You've done this before, and thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Director Geisinger. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Mr. Morgan, thank you so much for staying up late and being patient with us. Very good presentation, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
Same here. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Thank you. Our second item for tonight is, since we've adjusted the agenda just a bit, is impacts of window coverage to advertising. So I'd like to ask John McKay, Chief of Staff, and Adrian Mabry, Manager, Projects, Contracts, and Marketing, to present this item to our committee.
Thank you, Committee Chair Benker. This is John McKay, Chief of Staff, RTD. In a moment, I'll just be turning the microphone over to Adrian Mabry, the Manager of Contracts and Projects for the Marketing Division here with RTD. Adrian will be bringing up a presentation, as he's doing right now, and he will be going over the results of a request for information that was set out for the transit industry as a result of the board's action last October. And without further ado, I'll just get out of the way and let Mr. Mabry give his presentation. Adrian.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mabry?
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. Adrian Mabry, Manager, Projects and Contracts and Marketing. This presentation portion of the evening is structured to try and bring information back from a request for information sent to the industry, transit agent or advertising industry, as well as to synthesize feedback that was received from a transit agency industry request that we sent out to multiple agencies. And then at the end, we're seeking some feedback in terms of what kind of direction the board would like us to go. Okay. Just to set the table for where we're at, in 2022, a system advertising program, which has been referred to earlier today, was entered into with our previous advertising partner. That included on-vehicle advertising as well as digital kiosks. Up to and through 2025, that program was operated.
Mr. Mabry, I'm sorry, but you're sharing your presenter view of the slides. If you could show the...
Any idea how I can switch that easily?
I think if you go to the bottom of the presentation there, the third icon in, see if you click that, if that does the trick. No. I think you'll want to end the show.
Actually, how about that?
There it is.
Jack.
There you go.
Just had to find the right button. Thank you, Mr. Kroll.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Mabry, you can continue.
up until 2025, when RTD negotiated a settlement agreement with the previous contractor in and through September up to September 2025, we were in the process of winding down the previous agreement. We released an RFP for a new vendor so that we could be prepared in the absence of the previous advertising partner. In October, the board considered and did make a change to an adjustment to the commercial advertising policy. That happened in the middle of the active solicitation. Solicitations were returned and reviewed in November, and based on the current situation with the advertising policy, no viable responses for solicitation were received. We terminated the contract with the previous partner in December of 2025, and in 2026, we took on internally operation and maintenance of the ongoing program. In looking at the feedback that we received from the RFI, when we talk about transit agency effectiveness, window formats were rated the highest, 5 out of 5, in terms of importance to the industry, and especially specifically in terms of brand awareness, advertising recall, engagement, and purchase intent. Window inclusive formats were across the board the top performing across all the key performance indicators in the questions that were asked. Standardized formats, what we call traditionals, things like kings, queens, and tails that are on the buses, on bus exteriors, below the windows, between the window wells, and on the tail end of the vehicle, perform lower, approximately rating about a 3 out of 5. One of the key insights we took away from the transit agency feedback was that window coverage is not the exception, it is really the norm. Transit agencies have varying degrees in which they structure window coverage. But it is the norm to include window coverage with structured exclusions such for safety, such as not having things on operator windows, on doors, things of that nature. Regarding campaign versus revenue, anywhere between 20 to 50% of campaigns include some form of window coverage. This speaks to the impact of these advertisements as well as the desirability by advertisers to use these types of formats. And it's estimated that between 40 and 50% of agency revenues are driven by window formats. They are a very, very high demand, and they are also based on demand. They are a more expensive format, which drives up the revenues. In terms of advertiser behavior, window formats are prioritized by national buyers. There are some advertisers who only buy window formats, and not having window formats would take those advertisers out of the running for placing advertising with a vendor that doesn't have window formats. That creates lost revenue opportunities for the agency in the long run. Looking specifically now at bus advertising policies, we did ask some questions of the agencies that we inquired with. In the bus mode, most allow full or partial, some sort of coverage of windows. Widely available formats are full wraps and ultra super kings or USKs. USKs typically are large rectangles that reside between the wheel wells and the top and the bottom of the vehicle. All of the bus advertising policies included safety exclusions, excluding the use of the operator side window, the front door, and the first window curbside. Those were standard exclusions with other advertising policies. Those are the same exclusions that RTD had previously under its advertising policy. When you shift to rail mode, there's a little bit more variation in the rail mode. Wider options in terms of some allowing full coverage with some specific exclusions for safety. Others, about 30 to 50% of the market, find that a partial coverage process or program works well for them, and limited coverage is really a smaller portion of the market. Full prohibition of window coverage is rare amongst the other agencies that we spoke to. We asked questions about safety and operations. Specifically, some of the norms is that a perforated film for window coverage is the standard, and it uses a 60-40 ratio of visible space to printed material. I'm going to make the assumption that everybody here has been on the inside of a vehicle and looked through a window wrapped and understands that perforation concept. It does create a visibility for folks from the inside to the out. None of the agencies that we spoke to reported any major issues with regard to either safety or operations. We did ask some questions about customer experience. Generally speaking, most of the agencies felt the concerns were manageable. Their concerns around customer experience are mitigated again with the specific limits that are placed upon where windows window coverage is applied and the materials used. So really their feedback is that the impacts are manageable and acceptable given the situation at hand. As far as the financial impact, this is sort of the spoiler alert here, allowing window coverages increases revenue. I mean, this whole part of the evening can be summed up as window coverage, window allowance is good for revenue, taking away windows is bad for revenue. Our data that was received from agencies indicated about 39% of the total advertising revenue is generated from ads with windows. And the key motivator here is that it improves competition, especially with national advertising purchases. I got a few slides here these are look backs at some of the window coverage examples that RTD implemented under its previous policy. These would be Kongs or Ultra Super Kings on rail. As you can see, there are some windows covered. There are also windows that are not impacted by the advertising. Similar example for full wraps on light rail. Again, just examples of where there is a 50% window allowance and windows that are available for somebody to seat at that are not impacted by window coverage versus the ones that are. And again, a similar type of application on commuter rail. Finally, just some examples for bus. These are full wrap examples and some creative examples, being able to use various windows within the configuration of a 50% allowance. This would be an Ultra Super King. Again, windows available, windows covered. So just to present some alternatives, the staff recommendation would be for the board or for the committee to direct us to come back with a updated policy, modifying the window coverage, adopting a moderated, structured approach, which helps us balance both the revenue and the customer experience. The other options are to retain the current policy with no window coverage, or obviously we could expand to full coverage. Neither of those are really the recommendation at this point in time. And at that point, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mabry. Do we have questions or comments? Let me go with our committee board directors first. So Director Larson, do you have questions, comments?
You said you thought we should go, I think, sort of a middle path where we don't go for, I guess, completely full coverage. I'm not sure I understand the difference exactly, but would you project there's more revenue if we went for completely full coverage?
I wouldn't project significantly more revenue with full coverage, there's no real data to suggest that there's a huge increase in the differential between the policy that we used to have, which was when the policy was adopted previously, it was adopted to be in that moderate zone to allow for applications that generated the revenue that we've seen historically and not to fully impact all the windows on our vehicles. So no, I don't see a huge enough reason to go for 100% coverage.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Director Guzman, I think you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for bringing this to us. I have a couple of questions. Thank you for giving us some options to consider tonight as well with all of this and explaining it in more thorough detail than we've had before. I want to understand when we're looking at a 40-foot bus, not an articulated, and I'm less concerned about the train right now. I want to focus on something that I understand. I know there are FTA and FRA regulations that require us to leave the front windows around the operator clear, and where these can be placed. I'm trying to recall because I came in on the bus and I'm trying to remember if it's the first two window panels that extend past the door into the area where the reserved seating is for people with disabilities and elders. And so is it possible to mitigate some of the issues that we heard about tonight on the very back of the bus or on those front windows by not allowing that space to be used through policy and still achieve the end of these contracts as you've presented here? Because this seems like low-hanging fruit. And it also seems like we rushed a decision. I did not vote for this policy change, by the way, originally. And so I would like to reconsider this because I think we can maybe mitigate and find a middle path forward where we can receive these revenues, but also be mindful of how it impacts our customers, which sounds like is how every other agency that does this is doing it, right? Am I
Hey,
crazy?
Mr. Mabry, do you have any comments? Was that a
So
question, Mr. Guzman? or
I think
would you like
the
more
short answer is yes, and I would say I'm after having trouble sharing earlier, I'm a little hesitant to try and share this again, but I'm going to give it a try. Can we see this slide?
Yeah.
Okay. What you're suggesting here I'm looking at the common spirit slide here at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
What you're suggesting is currently we have no window coverage. Under our previous policy, the operator window at the very front, the front doors, and this first window would not have been ever included in advertising coverage. I think where you're going is these first two windows here you're looking for some sort of opportunity to say, we're going to exclude the first three windows perhaps and make the rest of the windows available. We're still trying to strike a balance in that you're still approaching that 50-50, but maybe with more prescription towards which windows are not available and which windows might be available. Am I hearing your question correctly?
Yes, that's correct. And thank you for bringing that up. So for example, looking at the DU advertisement up on the top, persons that typically have the motion sickness on a bus would sit towards the middle or front. So it would make sense that those front windows would not be covered. And the back windows may be able to be covered. But also the persons with disability are on those front couple of windows. And so that reserved seating area is really important to make sure that we have the windows clear. And the perforations, I guess, and I don't know enough about this, so if you can inform us on this, there's a 60-40 and a 50-50 opportunity for window perforation. Which one gives greater visibility? Because I get confused with it. Is it the 60-40 where it's 60% visibility and 40% coverage? Or do I have that reversed?
Nope, you've got it. That is correct. 60-40 does provide the greater visibility, and 60-40 has been the prescribed material in our statements of work over the past several decades.
Okay. I would also like to point out, just as a comment to this, and it will probably bleed into the next one as well, the windows that are not covered with advertisement still have dark film on them. So at night, it's going to be challenging to see out of them. It's easier to see out of windows that don't have advertisement on them. And clearly that's a concern for our community. And I'm listening, but I'm also trying to understand when we're in the situation that we're in currently, and we were not here when this policy was decided on, why we wouldn't make a move to pick this low-hanging fruit, but do it responsibly, right? We don't need to take up more space than we need to. So let's be thoughtful about how we do that. One other thing I'd like to bring up, if it's okay, Madam Chair, is that there's no current employee employed by RTD, because we did this through a contractor previously, to put on wraps or remove them. And so we have run into a bit of a conundrum about how fast we moved with this particular policy and left our buses and our trains at risk of not of having these advertisements that look terrible now because we have no way to maintain them because we don't have an agreement about who could do that work. And so I think that having this conversation has other implications for how we operate and provide a really great customer experience while also seeking that additional revenue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Rusha.
Thank you. I have a few questions and then just comments. So do we know, before the board passed this policy change, do we know what percentage of our fleet had the windows covered?
I don't.
Ads.
I don't have it as a percentage. I can tell you that to Director Guzman's previous or closing point about the number of advertising units that were in the market when we parted with the previous vendor. That was in the neighborhood of, I'm going to use this as advertising units. So figure this as sides of a vehicle. There was over 700 advertising units that we inherited that were not within that didn't meet the policy that had been adopted. We have been in the process. I've been working with the vendor that we contracted to help us temporarily maintain the advertising program, both to do installations of new sales, but also we have been actively removing. I don't have the updated number for you because the charting is being done in a spreadsheet, and I just haven't been tracking how much progress necessarily we've made. But I know that we've made enormous progress on bus. We have made consistent progress in light rail, removing 3 wraps from the light rail a week. So that's, if it's 3 wraps times 2, that's 6 units a week from the light rail side. We've been a little bogged down with the commuter rail side. That's largely due to just some working parameters between my advertising partner and Denver Transit operators, and we're working through to get that program back up and operational. So yes, there was a substantial number of those, and we're in the process of trying to get that cleaned up. That became an immediate priority upon the change in the policy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mabry. Any other comment, Director Rusha?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for that, Mr. Mabry. I had assumed not all of these wraps have come down because I've written on our system, and I was wondering earlier during comments if I was writing a different bus and train network than other people. I do not fault staff for the time it's taking to make the changes, though. As Director Guzman noted, we didn't have staff assigned to this previously. I just want to make a few comments on the policy itself and what's before us. So I understand why folks are frustrated that we might reverse the policy. One thing I just wanted to flag is that folks are challenging staff's interpretation of the data while also relying on staff's data to support their lower savings estimate, which is a logical fallacy. One of the comments, a couple of them referenced Lamar's projected window premium, but that's actually kind of irrelevant now because Lamar took like 40% of revenue and we get to keep 100%. Those are completely different, variables that we're considering now. We never allowed 100% window coverage. Staff isn't proposing that now. I mean, staff does have guardrails in their proposal, including, limits, complaint tracking, customer service feedback, and the board will revisit the policy. I personally, I've said this in committee before, I don't like corporate ads on our vehicles. I think it's tacky, but that's not the question before us. What we're asking ourselves is, do we give up $1 or $4.5 million in potential revenue during a $217 million budget deficit crisis? That's the question before us. And there's disagreement obviously on how much money we're losing, but nobody thinks we're not losing money, right? It's a question of how much. and I just, I agree that, wrapping or, advertising on the windows is a customer experience issue. And also because many things can be true, we don't have a dignified ride if folks are scrambling to catch a bus because we had to cut service on a route because of our budget, right? Or if they call customer service, but we have reduced staff because of a budget. Like that's not riding with dignity either. And this is a budget, this is a budget conversation. I don't think staff brings us these things for funsies. I think they're bringing us this request for a modified proposal for a reason. Several of us said we trusted staff to basically run an internal advertising agency. I feel like that's scope creep, but I can yield to the majority. And at the same time, we're giving staff a message that we don't trust their subject matter expertise. Similarly, we asked staff repeatedly over months to go back and tweak the budget again. Go find more cost savings. Like, go find alternative revenue streams. That's been a thing since long before I got on the board. And staff did what we asked them to do. And so I just, want us to be mindful that it's not fair, pardon the pun, but like, it's not fair to have one foot on the brake and one foot on the pedal. And, if we made a mistake last fall because we didn't have a proper hearing process and we didn't have a fiscal note, I think we as a board, I'm one of those people, we just need to own it, like take the L, own our decisions. But, before we make any decision on this, I just ask us to really be mindful of the message that we're sending staff. I think it's kind of a mixed message. And to that end, I do appreciate this presentation and the and the work that staff has done in trying to meet the board's needs while also balancing our budget. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Director Ruscia. I think I'm going to go right now to Director Nicholson, Larson, and Pagliari in that order. Director Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one question for Mr. Mabry, and then I have some comments. So, Mr. Mabry, I was just wondering, so this is an item which was the policy that was passed, and admittedly, I worked on this pretty heavily with Director Pagliari, to address a customer experience concern. Yet I noticed there was no examination in your presentation of the impact on customer experience. So it factored in the how much money could we save, but it didn't look at all at the what's the cost of putting them back. And I was wondering why that was the case.
Mr. Mabry.
Certainly. Thank you for the question. In October, based on the conversation and the dialogue that occurred during the board consideration of this item, I think the message that staff heard clearly was, what is the financial impact? The wrangling and main points of discussion, yes, there was a point made about customer experience, but what staff heard was, we need to know what the financial impact is, and is there a financial impact? And that's what the RFI was developed and implemented to answer. So.
Okay, I see CEO Johnson, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Secretary Nicholson, for the question and Mr. Mabry's response. I just wanted to supplement it and say what Mr. Mabry said was absolutely right. Of course, when this came full circle, we were in the middle of a procurement and altered that procurement to provide an option due to the fact that this was active and there was a blackout period in which we could not speak about a certain loss of revenue and costs. Hence, it was discussed and there was direction that we shared as staff that we would do a request for information so we could garner a better understanding what was happening through the industry, considering that we had non-responsive submittals, i.e. none, and hence we went forward with the RFI, and that's the purpose of this going forward. It was not about the customer experience. It was about what is the lost revenue and what might other agencies be doing, and hence that's why we went forward with the RFI when we did not get any responsive proposals. Thanks.
Okay, Director Nicholson, do you want to respond quickly? And then I'm going to move to other directors.
Yeah, I have a comment that I'm going to make, if you don't mind. So here's what I'll say. This discussion is worthwhile, but it's not yet ripe. We're only halfway done with our implementation of the window ads ban. Staff presentation is unfortunately light on data, missing any examination of the customer impact, and it fails to account for confounding variables like the substitution effects when you can't sell full wraps and you instead are selling the ads that don't cover the windows. The rider experience impact is real, as we heard repeatedly tonight. After the ban is fully implemented in December, RTD will have the chance next year in our customer and community surveys to measure the impact on customers, the positive impact on customers. At that point in 2027, once we have actual data, RTD should re-examine whether the window ad ban makes sense. RTD made a commitment to the public when we passed this policy. Our financial situation was very visible to us in October, as our own comments during that meeting made clear. The value to advertisers of window coverings was actively included in the discussion, and detailed information about ad sales was included in the packet. We should wait until the policy has been implemented and the benefits and the costs are measured before we relitigate this decision.
Okay, thank you. Director Larson?
Yeah, I was one of the people who brought this up as a 3-member motion. And at the time, I was basically led to believe that the losses from doing this would be pretty modest. Since then, and with this evidence that's been presented, it seems like it's, the revenue that we're missing out on is probably a lot larger than what I had initially believed. And, we definitely are in however clear it was then, it's more clear now that we have a budget crisis. And, we don't really know what kind of trade-offs we're going to have to make. And the availability of $3 million or $5 million could be the difference between, a few people getting laid off or not. It could be the difference between whether we increase a popular bus line to 15 minutes or not. And to me, this is, way more money, it looks like, than what I thought at the time. And so I definitely think at this point, what I would advise us to do is to bring this forward as a motion, a resolution for the next finance and planning meeting. And then, at the very least, maybe, there are, I know that there are a lot of people who feel very strongly about this, and I'm sure they will make their voices held again. And, perhaps the board will not support any changes, but it seems crazy that we wouldn't at least take the opportunity to make that decision as a board. This is when I look at the list of all the items that you had, Karen, where we could get various amounts of money for, I would say the majority of them were smaller than this potential revenue. It just, and most of those to me were far more painful, frankly, and damaging to the agency, or a lot of them were, at least, than this, I think, could possibly be. So that's definitely where I stand right now.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to go to Director Pagliari. Go for it. Tell us your views here.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Mabry, for presenting tonight. And thank you, GM and CEO Johnson, for coming back with this request for more information. I've been following this closely. I was the director who championed this and got this policy passed last year. I'd like to remind everyone that the middle ground on this policy is where we're at today. I talked to many directors who actually didn't want to advertise on buses at all. They felt that public property shouldn't be sold, and that the experience of riding a dignified vehicle without a branding of a law firm or something else on it was worth the cost. So I'd just like to remind everyone that where we are today was through a process of collaboration and agreement. And I think in addition to that, I really second what Director Nicholson said on this. We're moving too quickly. We don't have to worry about whether or not the wraps will disintegrate. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the wraps will be done by the end of June. So starting in July, we will have, for the first time in many years, which, by the way, RTD did run ad-free transit operating vehicles for a long time without advertisements, at least in some different capacities, as we learned when we were looking back on the data. It wasn't until recently that we chose to do these full window cover ad wraps. But going back to that point, we'll have at least a few months to see, how does the public respond to this? How does our image improve? How has the rider experience changed? And as we heard from many, many people tonight who care deeply about seeing out the windows, this issue is more than just being able to get revenue from selling a limited amount of space on an ad. A limited amount of window space on an ad. It is a little bit more to the riders as like, can we see out the windows? Does RTD respect me enough to let me see out my window? Am I being treated as someone who has a private automobile? And so I think with that, I think I would ask that we spend some time to look at how does the rider experience improve given this new policy, put this in the customer feedback survey, and come to this next year and really talk about like whether it's worth it after we have more information. And I think I'll add a final point. I would trust the agency to just run our own ads. I mean, I really do have a hard time believing that it's simply the window space itself that is preventing people from advertising with RTD. And I think I have one request for Mr. Mabry or General Manager Johnson. If we could get a list of the transit agencies you contacted to inquire about this and like really see, like, are these agencies that have high net promoter scores? Are these agencies that have high community value? Or these agencies where, people see them as rolling billboards? Like, what is the public perception of the agencies that we talk to really get a sense of like, do we want to be that agency that sets a standard that we will not have windows blocked by advertisements? Or do we want to be the agency where we sell out our rider experience just for a few extra dollars? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mabry, I see you've got your hand up. If you'd like to respond.
Thank you. I've got two comments. One, to just manage expectations. Director Pagliari, you mentioned that we would be done removing wraps by the end of June. I want to temper that expectation with, we have a significant number of wraps to remove, and the time and resources that it takes are substantial. I will not make that time frame. At the rate that we are going and with the volume of advertisements to be removed, I would say we are closer to the end of this, to the end of 2026 before we actually get the ad units that are old cleaned up. That is based on just the resources that we have available right now.
Okay.
The second thing I'll mention is that the transit agencies that we did speak with are mentioned in the board report. They're reversed in the packet. So if you go to the second one in line, and it is listed, they are listed on packet page 37. Questionnaire sent to Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, Utah Transit Authority, King County Metro Transit, Dallas Area Rapid Transit, Massachusetts Bay Transit, Houston Metro, Washington Metro, Pittsburgh Regional Transit, and San Diego Metropolitan Transit.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mabry. We need to keep moving on, and you also have a second item to present to us, and we've got a number of questions, and then we've got another issue after your presentation. So it's 9 o'clock. Director Gusenritter, question or comment?
Thank you, Chair Banker. Yeah, I'll try to be quick. Agree with Director, or maybe Dr. Larson, that ultimately I think this is a broader board decision. And then I'll just say that, I mean, our financial position has changed since we originally voted on this policy. We need every nickel we can get. However, I do think we need to let this breathe a little bit and fully better understand the impacts of removing all of the wraps, and what is the customer feedback, and weigh that versus what the financial impact is. And then the last thing I'll say is I'm fully on board with bringing it in-house, and having an RTD managed advertising program. Actually, one more point is that I understand window space is a premium, and there's dollars that we can get out of that, but can we lean heavier into the billboard space on our properties, and heavier into the digital advertising space? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for being right on target. I appreciate that. Is that more of a question to our CEO? And okay,
No,
that's good.
no.
Director Arcuri, you're up next.
Thank you. And I'm not sure who this question would be for either, if it's for our CEO or if it's for Mr. Mabry. Could you please explain to me how you defined a failed procurement here? Did literally nobody want to do this? As I recall, I read in one of these items something about we didn't hit a minimum MAG target. And if that is the answer, if you could please just explain to me more fully what that means in terms of how that relates to a failed procurement. And if so, if someone did respond, what was it that they were offering that we did not want?
Madam Chair, I will start if that's permissible. Wanted to ensure that we weren't conflating two items here. So when we talked about a failed procurement, we're talking about a request for proposal that was let in the fall. And in doing so, we have scopes of work and there were certain requirements. And considering that the 3-director item came forward about the prohibition on window coverings, we collectively as a team, when I say we, Adrian and others within procurement and contracting legal services wanted to ensure that we could stay within the guidelines of the solicitation and not cancel it. And so we provided options in the solicitation. We modified it, saying what would be your proposal with window coverings and without, because we did not know the outcome of the board action that took place in October of 2025. When we put the options in with no window coverings and hence the board policy went into effect, we had no responsive proposals relative to the newly enacted policy. Hence, that's why it was a failed procurement. On the flip side, when you're talking about a minimum annual guarantee, we're talking about a threshold that we established regardless of what the third-party advertiser would have made. There was a minimum amount of revenue that would have been paid to the agency. And Mr. Mabry, please correct me if I did not speak appropriately and if there's something else that needs to be amplified.
I think that's spot on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Mr. Mabry, could we go on to the next item, please?
Certainly. Are we seeing the presentation in its full form?
Yes.
Perfect.
Looks good.
All right. So, with this particular item, being that the agency has taken on responsibility for the advertising program since January of this year, wanted to bring it to the board to the committee in terms of providing some direction whether we retain management of this program in-house or go back to a solicitation for an advertising partner. Running through this real quickly, we'll just talk about sort of some of the market feedback, current results from where we're at with the program as we're managing it, and then delve into sort of the revenue expectations and projections that we're seeing. I've already given the background that is similar to my previous presentation, so I'll go past that. RTD has worked with a program, RTD has managed this program with an advertising partner for over 20 years. Historically, revenues, and I'm going to carve out the years that we worked with our previous partner under a system advertising program with the digital advertising revenue that was proposed, and they actually never really met those revenue thresholds. So I'm going to go back to historical levels. When we ran an on-vehicle advertising program, the minimum annual guarantee that was paid to RTD was between 3.1 and 3.4 million. I want to be clear here that the minimum annual guarantee is what the advertising partner commits to paying to RTD regardless of what they sell. And it is based on a revenue share that has typically been in historical terms a 60-40 revenue share where RTD garners 60% of the revenue. The advertising partner retains 40%. This will become germane later in the presentation. Resources applied to this are limited. I manage the program as the program manager, and we've got operations coordinating vehicle access to vehicles. These are portions of all of our responsibilities. This program was never 100% of my time. In 2025, we published the RFP. We're getting into sort of the conversation we closed with a few moments ago. Because of the potential change to the policy that was occurring during the active solicitation, we came up with two proposals. One was a with window proposal, and we had a minimum annual guarantee of $2 million with a 50% revenue share. We cut that in half for a without window proposal. We required a $1 million per year minimum annual guarantee and a 50% revenue share. Because of the change to the policy that occurred in October, proposals including window coverage were not considered, so we did not even review those. Proposals excluding window coverage, because we established a minimum annual guarantee of $1 million, that was not met. None of the proposals received actually proposed revenue equal to or in excess of $1 million a year. It was all less than. Therefore, because of that stipulation we had in the solicitation, all of the proposals we received were deemed non-responsive. Since January, from an internal management standpoint, RTD's managed the program internally since January. That includes sales, operations, scheduling, billing, all of the implementation. I have jokingly talked about it with folks in my department. I have pretty much single-handedly taken on the role of what our previous advertising partner had 10 to 12 people doing. So we're limping through. It is taking almost all of my time and about 75 to 80% of an account receivable staff member's time for invoicing and billing. We certainly do not have operations set up for a long-term solution. This is a stopgap temporary solution, and we would certainly need to look at investing in resources should we decide to take this in-house. As of May 8th, when those materials were required to be submitted, we have booked over $660,000 in gross revenue in sales. $490,000 of that is strictly advertising space. An additional $174,000 is accountable to production and installation. We are receiving revenue on that because there is a markup from what we're paying for that. So our net revenue after expenses about $537,000 as of May. Some of the revenue considerations based on what we're doing internally with no window coverage, the pacing that we are seeing, revenue expectations kind of hover between $1.5 million and $1.6 million annually, just loosely based on what we're generating currently. We're projecting window coverage with windows, revenue with windows at between $3.4 million and $5 million, and I will get into that. This is based on historical revenues from the previous advertising partner. As I mentioned, if we move in this direction, there is some additional resources that are required. The proposal here is for us to consider 3 full-time equivalents or FTEs in the communications and engagement department that are specifically designed to support sales efforts and the administrative and operational functions. I also want to support our finance department. They have graciously loaned us year to date a person in their department to handle these. So I want to make sure that we're accounting for the load on them and providing 100% person FTE committed to the invoicing and receivables in that respect. Additionally, There is a technology need to support all of the functions between sales and contracting and inventory management. So we would need to include a technology element to this. Estimates for annual expenses around this are between $470,000 and $500,000. Okay. In this graph here, the first column is the historical revenue that I mentioned early on. Gross sales were between $3.4 million and $5 million. That's gross sales. The revenue guaranteed to RTD was $3.4 million at a revenue share of 60%. The net revenue was $3.4 million. What we are projecting with utilizing a vendor, including window coverage, and this is based on the proposals that were somewhat the proposals that were received in the previous solicitation. Similar gross sales amounts, but smaller minimum annual guarantees and potentially smaller revenue shares. This drops the previous program where we received $3.4 million. So we're looking really coming in somewhere between $2 million and $3 million in guaranteed annual revenue if we solicit a partner with window coverage. Based on the previous solicitation, we're projecting even less revenue. And I have to point out an error in this particular graph that I want to call out right now. This bottom number here that says net revenue of $900,000 and $960,000 is actually the difference between gross sales and the revenue to RTD. It is not actually the net revenue. So projected revenue with a vendor excluding windows, we would anticipate them to sell 1.5, 1.6 million. The revenue share is much lower at 30%. So RTD sees revenue in the $450,000 to $480,000 range. With a vendor, this 900 and 960 is actually $450,000 to $480,000 if we contract a vendor with no window coverage. Now we move to the final two options, which are in-house revenues, either with window coverage or excluding window coverage. Excluding window coverage, we, through the process of similar revenue, do 1.5 to 1.6 million in gross sales. That's all revenue to RTD, less the projected expenses estimated at $500,000, giving us a projected net revenue of $1 million to 1.1. We estimate greater revenues with window coverage, gross revenues between 3.5 and 5 million. All of that becomes revenue usable to RTD, less the expenses of our overhead. So the net revenues to RTD are in the $3 million to $4.5 million range.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mabry. Are you?
Absolutely. So,
yes.
The options for consideration here are for staff to develop and implement a phased plan to bring the operations in-house, or for us to go back to the RFP and solicitation process and work with a vendor on this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I will say, I really like the idea of bringing it all in-house. And I know personally, I would like to pursue that. Do we have any other comments, ideas from our committee? Committee first, please. Director Guzman.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mabry, what is staff's stance on how long it would take to create the in-house group of folks to make this possible? And the reason I ask is because if it makes more sense immediately to do the RFP for an external vendor while this is set up to become internal, or if it makes sense to just make it internal beginning, if we were to go in this direction.
Okay. Thank you for the question. My immediate response is I don't see the benefit of inserting an external vendor in an interim period. On a program of this size, external vendors are going to be looking for 3 to 5 year commitments for contracts. And we are certainly able, I think, to stand up a program sooner than 3 to 5 years. It is going to take some time in terms of job descriptions and sussing out technology resources, et cetera. I'm going to estimate 18 to 24 months, trying to be conservative. But to try and do a solicitation and bring a vendor in for a short period of time is not worth it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have one more quick one.
Yes.
Sorry. Right. You said you listed a number of employees and FTEs, different departments. But you also mentioned that we are currently contracting somebody to remove these. And I didn't hear you talk about having personnel available to potentially do this work, the physical part of this work of applying these to the buses. Can you provide some insight there, please?
Yes, so when RTD contracts with a vendor, when RTD contracts with a customer, they pay two items. They pay a printing, production, and installation cost, which is the production and then final installation. We are currently contracting with an external vendor for that, and I would propose that we maintain that. My goal, if we bring this program in-house, would be to actually augment those resources. We would do a solicitation for vendors to provide that service. And I would want to supplement that from one vendor to a bench of vendors so that we have additional resources in order to be more efficient and effective.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Okay, Mr. Mabry, thank you so much for staying up late. I see Director Arcuri. Director Arcuri, please. You're muted.
Yes, here we go. I'm sorry, Mr. Mabry, one more quick question. So you just talked about hiring someone to print and stick the wrap on, take it off.
Correct.
Were those costs factored into that chart you just showed us?
Correct. So they're factored into, if I go back to the revenue to date that we have garnered, when I spoke about production and installation and there being net revenues, our gross revenue on production and installation year to date was about 170,000. Our net revenue on that was about 43,000. Those production and installation costs are paid by the clients. That is a pass-through. It's also ultimately a pass-through cost to the customer. RTD is not paying those expenses.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, Mr. Mabry, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Here are my thoughts. I would like to be able to move this particular item forward. So it'd be great if we could talk about it and maybe have a measure to actually vote on at our next meeting. The first item, let's wait on it for a couple of months. I'd like to talk to some other directors to see how quickly we move on bus wraps. So hopefully the board is fine with that. We've got future discussions and we can make decisions at that point. Here's my suggestion, team. It's 9:15, 11 o'clock out where Kelly is right now. Since we've had this discussion on whether or not we're going to do taking a look at fares, I do want to pursue this. I do think we need to be thoughtful about what fares we might choose to go forward with. One good example is 1994 or right around there when I was on the board. We voted for Skyride to start when DIA opened. We charged $10. 30 years later, we're charging $10. I'd at least like to see an inflation increase on some of these things. I think we need to be thoughtful and not just say, hey, we don't want to do fare discussion. Maybe we could take it one by one. But at this point, I don't know about you, but we've been meeting for 4 hours. We've already discussed this. I would like to delay this, postpone it for another meeting when we're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and we're ready to have a feisty discussion. So I'm hoping everybody will agree with me. Director Guzman.
Can we just table it till our next finance and planning meeting?
Yes. Thank you for the language officially. I want to move it to another time when we can have a more full discussion and we're not quite so tired. So I hope CFO Mackey, are you still online? I hope you can now continue your vacation, but thank you so much for everything you've done for us this night, giving up your vacation time to help our board, our committee move through this. So let me move on to other matters. Are there any other matters to discuss? Okay, seeing none, I will actually like to just FYI you. Next board meeting, we are going to take up fiscal policy. I know both Director Arcuri, Director Rusha, and myself and Jack, and I know to some degree our CFO, we have all been working and making some modifications, language clarifications. We will be sending that out to folks. And, you know, we will all have our comments. And so our next July meeting might also be a long meeting, just heads up. So our next meeting date is Tuesday, July 14th, 2026. Scheduled at that meeting, we will take several proposed debt refinancing, full discussions on RTD economic impact study, another proposed bond refinancing, RTD's fiscal to date financial performance, and here's another one of our favorites, the 27-31 5-year financial forecast. So it's looking like it's going to be an exciting meeting. So any other discussion, any other item for the good of the order? Okay. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for doing all of this. I do think we've made a lot of progress tonight. And I thank you for your thoughts and your input. So seeing no other discussion, the meeting is